And
That was pretty
that's the way
obvious.
they used to do it, but I think then it had to come back and forth.
I'd like to call the May 25th special meeting of the City of Post Falls Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everybody. Again, make sure that you have turned off or at least silenced your cell phone. If you do need to take a call, step out. And also, if you plan on speaking at all tonight in general comment or on one of the hearings, make sure that you fill out that paperwork and drop it off up front so that we can keep things rolling. But we will go ahead and get things started with roll call.
Stephenson.
Here.
Carey.
Here.
Kimball.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Schlauer.
Here.
Hamby.
Here.
Mr. Manley, I believe that we have ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentation. A couple things to cover.
Yeah, a couple things to highlight. Today is the National Senior Health and Fitness Day. Not going to go into that. I think that's self-explanatory. The next one is it's also National Missing Children's Day. A little bit of history on that. National Missing Children's Day was proclaimed by President Ronald Reagan in 1983 to acknowledge the many children who would go missing each and every year. From 1979 to 81, there was a series of child abductions that shook America. It began with the disappearance of a 6-year-old, Erton Pertz, in New York City on May 25th, 1979. The National Missing Children's Day is observed to commemorate the date of the disappearance of Eton and honor all other missing children. So I'd encourage anybody to go read that. There's a lot more about it, but it definitely was interesting.
Well, I appreciate you acknowledging those, and those are always good thoughts and things to reflect on in regard to the national days. Moving on, any amendments to the agenda this evening?
There is not.
Okay, declaration of conflict, ex parte contacts, or site visits. Anything to declare?
Nope.
No.
Seeing none? No. Okay. Then we'll move into the consent calendar, Mr. Manley.
Yeah, we got one item. It's the minutes from the May 10th, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It's item A.
Commissioners, hopefully had a chance to take a look at the consent calendar, and I would look for a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Stephenson.
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
Kimball.
Abstain?
Davis.
Yes.
Schlauer.
I'll abstain.
Hamby.
Yes.
All right. Citizen issues. This section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the commission on an issue that is not on this evening's agenda. Person wishing to speak will have 5 minutes. Comments related to pending public hearings, including decisions that may be appealed by City Council, are out of order and should be held for that public hearing. Repeated comments regarding the same or similar previous addressed are out of order and should not be allowed as well. In order to ensure adequate public notice, Idaho law provides that any item other than emergencies require action must be placed on the agenda for the upcoming meeting. As such, the commission cannot take action on items raised during citizen issue at the same meeting, but may request additional information that may be placed as an item on future agendas. With that being said, do we have anyone wishing to speak with general citizen issues? Seeing none, then we will move on to unfinished and old business. There is none, correct?
That is true.
Then that'll bring us to the main portion of this evening, and that would be our public hearings. We do have 4, and so we will go ahead and get things started and open up the first one, which is a zone recommendation for Barnum's Addition zone change. And John, I'll let you explain the file number.
Good evening, Commissioners. John Manley, Planning Manager here at the City of Post Falls. Introducing the staff report pertaining to the Barnum zone change, file number ZC223. So the applicant is Gordon Dobler of Dobler Engineering. He's representing the property owner, Robert Wilhelm. They're looking to rezone approximately 0.54 acres that's currently zoned single-family residential to the medium-density R2 zoning district. Here's the project location. It's at the end of Elm Road, just north of I-90. There's currently a duplex on that site. Water is provided by the East Green Acres, with city providing the sewer. As I stated, there's a duplex, but it's currently non-conforming. This proposal would would transfer this from being a non-conforming duplex to a conforming duplex, being a duplex in an R2 zone. So looking at the zone change criteria, we'll look at the first two here. Amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan's future land use map, as well as the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. Future land use designates this area as business commercial. That's that pink. Everything south, that blue, that would be transitional. I also do note here, and this will come into play a little bit later through the analysis, it's about a third of a mile from Southeast Way, which is a commuting commercial, evolving commercial corridor. So business commercial, I kind of bold here, that promotes a mixture of moderate high-density housing types within walking distance of the city center, neighborhood center, corridor commercial, as well as civic uses and other amenities. So one may deduce that a third of a mile may be within walking distance of that commercial corridor. Looking at the zoning map, you see here highlighted in right here in the hatched box, it's just east of an area that's zoned R2 also, and those are the R1 single family that's adjacent. The other criteria looking at is looking at whether or not it's consistent with the street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land use, community plans. You look in the staff report, the proposal wouldn't be inconsistent with the transportation network and it would be compatible. Looking at the commercial and high density criteria, this one really isn't applicable as they're not looking for criteria 4 for commercial. They're looking for that medium density. Next one, limited neighborhood commercial or lower density residential is typically assigned properties as they proceed farther away from the intense urban activity. Their proposal is medium density. So on that one there, I mean, this is kind of a transitional awkward area. You're not necessarily in an urban area. You're not necessarily in a core. It's kind of like I mentioned, that commuter corridor, but it is next to I-90, so as an interesting fit, but it's not incompatible. Looking at the industrial zoning criteria, that one's not applicable as they're not asking for that. There's where you kind of see the fit into the area, the proposal, and you can see the mix of uses blending. You see policies within the comprehensive plan encouraging infill development, redevelopment. Potentially that could be an option, as you are allowed to potentially subdivide this into other R2 lots. You also see a 1/3 from Southeast Way adds a potential walkability factor to some commercial services highlighted in the comp plan. And then you look at the transportation network there in the roads that are in proximity, Southeast Way and Pleasant View Way, providing access to other areas. Here are some of those goals and policies here. Grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy, providing diversity in lots, that's goal 7. Types of housing, policy 1, you can see here. A lot of these have been kind of mentioned. Promote compatible and well-designed development. They're just, at this time, just trying to make a non-conforming use conforming. We'll mention that if there was any development, they would pay impact fees that would go to public safety, streets, and parks. Gone over most of this. Agencies notified, as you see here. Here's the comments. The police department comment is being neutral. Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, they said they would leave their comment for any sort of review or permitting process down the road if such be. DEQ only had construction-related comments. Any comments for me on this at this time?
Is-
Anything for staff?
It's almost like a deja vu. Did we see one of these? Or-
Right next door.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, okay.
Yeah, it's
okay.
very close.
Okay, got it. Oh, also, I do have another question. Would this then allow for additional units to be built on that parcel?
Potentially to have different processes, so if it was like built to, it only could construct what was allowed in the R2 zone.
Right,
So they could potentially go through and do like a minor subdivision, which would be an administrative process, and we would just look to make sure that the proposed development meets the access requirements, the sewer water requirements,
okay.
the
So they,
lot
but they would
size.
have to come back up to staff, or they would have to,
Yeah, if it was enough lots, anything more than 4 lots or needs a new road comes to planning and zoning as a major subdivision. But if it's a minor subdivision, that's something done at the staff level.
but so it's only like a half-acre lot, and there's a duplex on it now. Could they add on to the duplex and make a third, I'm just wondering. if
Potentially, they could do.
Okay, they can.
Well, they couldn't do a triplex. I think
Okay.
all that's allowed in the R2 now is townhomes, duplexes, or single families.
Okay,
And
in a
so-
triplex,
Yeah, so.
Okay, got it.
Unless it was a 3-unit townhome,
okay,
then that could potentially be, we would just
Okay.
follow the rules that's been established by city council and you as a commission and
Okay.
do most of that administratively.
okay, I got it.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, sir. Invite the applicant up.
You want something?
I don't know.
Okay.
We're fine.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys memorized all those slides, right? So if I refer to them, Gordon Dobler, Dobler Engineering, representing Bobby Winholm tonight. Thank you. So I do want to set the stage a bit. This started with a 2-lot plat in the R1 zone that we had filed with staff. Staff realized that the duplex was non-conforming in an R1 zone, so we had to eliminate the non-conformance to go through with the 2-lot plat. That's most of the reason, if not all of it, that we're here tonight. So it would be an R2 zone that would allow the duplex. That's what we picked. We don't have, any grand plans. I was thinking about what you'd said in that there are some limitations. Could we, have additional lots? Well, that duplex sits almost halfway into the existing lot. So we're leaving the duplex. I haven't really dove into it, but at the most you might get one more lot out of it than the short plat that we already have. But at this point, that's really not the intent. We just want to move forward with the 2-lot plat and get the non-conforming use eliminated. That's why we're here tonight. But I understand you have to do the what-ifs, and I respect that. I would say, is it appropriate for the R2 zone? I believe so, for several reasons. The property across the street was recently zoned R2, and we're developing that. We brought a preliminary plat that the commission approved maybe 3 or 4 months ago. It abuts the freeway, which is always, multifamily, and this isn't even going to be that dense, but the R2 zone is appropriate next to, the freeway. And then there's really an easement on the north of this property, maybe 40-foot wide easement that separates this piece from the homes to the north. So it is, isolated, if you will. It's got all the utilities are in Elm Street, and with the development across the street, we'll be bringing sewer down and water down to serve the additional lot that we had proposed. So I think in short, it meets the, future land use, business, commercial. I think we check all the boxes, and we'd sure like to get the non-conforming status removed.
Questions for applicant?
Just want to understand, you're doing this because you are going to come back and to put another dwelling on there.
Yeah,
Because you're going to bring
actually-
the water and stuff in. I thought that's what I heard you say. so-
Yeah, no, you did. So there's a duplex that's, or no, it's actually a mobile, a single family that's on the property across the street, which the owner owns that also. And his intent was to take that and relocate it to this site. So that's why we created the other lot, so that he could move that over here. That's the plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? No? All right, thank you, sir. Public comment?
None.
None for, neutral, or against?
Nope.
Okay, so there would be no reason to come back up for any kind of rebuttal or additional information unless we need that.
No, I don't think so.
Any other questions?
Nope.
None? Before we close it out? Okay, we'll go ahead and close it out. We'll run through criteria quickly. Quickly but thoroughly.
Of course.
All right, dealing with zone change, amendment to the zoning map should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan future land use map. I think we are bringing it into what we would consider compliance in regard to that. Any comments or thoughts?
Well, the land use map has it as business commercial, and R2 is an implementing zone in that business commercial. So it would check that box.
Agreed.
Agreed? Agreed. Number 2, amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. I feel like,
I think that's pretty well covered in the staff report, and, you know, the applicant's narrative it's all on the record.
further expansion on that?
No.
Everyone's good? Okay, number 3. Zoning is assigned to such following considerations such as, such items as street classification, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. How do we feel about this?
Well, I think it follows with R2 already to the west of it. There's nothing going to go to the south of it because the freeway's right there.
Right.
So I don't think there's going to be a change in any traffic pattern at all anyhow through there. So I think it fits in there with all that.
I think it's important to realize that it's an existing duplex, and it's a non-conforming use, and they're just bringing it into conformance. And so the existing development and land use pattern is consistent with what it will bring in the future as R2.
Perfect. Number 4. Commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher classification.
It doesn't,
Not
yeah, it doesn't apply.
NA. Let's simplify and use that. I agree. Number 5. Limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from higher density urban activity. Ensure that the adequate land is available for future housing needs.
Right, I think R2 is considered a lower density housing, and it's further away from Celtics Way, which is the commercial corridor, but it's kind of one of those little tweener things where it's right there, and it's right next to the freeway. So I think it meets this criteria very well.
Agreed.
Other thoughts? Okay.
Yep.
Number 6, industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning. I believe that
It's not
we also
applicable.
agree it's not applicable. Okay. Having covered that, any further comment or question?
It makes sense. It's just trying to bring it into conformance, so.
Okay. If nothing else needs to be addressed, then I would look for a motion.
Okay. I move to approve the Barnum zone change file number ZC-22-3, finding that is consistent with a comprehensive plan and the zoning code. And there were I didn't note any any findings and conclusions.
Weren't anything in the staff report anyway.
Yeah, in the staff report. So, okay, with the zoning designation of R2.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call for a vote.
Hamby,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Stephenson,
Yes.
All right. Moved on to city council. Go ahead and get action item B started. Point zone change.
Point zone change, yeah, file number RZNE 1/2022. So the applicant is Wadsworth Development Group, located at 166 East 14,000 Suite 210, sorry.
Would you say that again, please?
No, I'm not gonna. That's it, I barely got it out. Out of Utah. And they're here tonight to maybe recite that again, so.
Okay.
Probably do a better job, since they know probably where they're from. The owner is Pointe Partners LLC. They're looking to rezone approximately 54.1 acres in the city of Post Falls from what's currently industrial, that's a typo, to the community commercial mix zoning district, and it does require a development agreement. Project location is, as you see here, hatched. It's the general location. It's, if you're familiar with Walmart at west part of town, it's just west of there, and Cabela's east of there, north of Interstate 90 and west of Bawway, mostly along Point Parkway. So I'm going to go a little bit on a history train with this. There was a site plan that consumed most of this area that was approved as a commercial site plan in 2008. You could see here these large lifestyle anchor pads that were being proposed. Cabela's did take one of them. I mean, not Cabela's, Walmart. That's that anchor 3. Cabela's is off to the west. But you have these other sites here just around that. So between this plan in 2008 and this plan in 2022, as far as planners, we've recognized that the commercial industry in of itself have changed significantly from what commuters and vehicular traffic would go to more of your destination strip malls to do their commerce and shopping. Now a lot of people are doing that online, and so the commercial sector in of itself, and maybe the applicant will speak to it more because it's more their forte, they've been looking at ways to stimulate more neighborhood commercial or more pad site commercial development. This is an approved subdivision that occurred on this site, and I'll show kind of how it relates to this just recently, that would create a road system connecting this site and also establishing some pads for pad development. This request has a few caveats to it. I said in the intro it requires a development agreement. So typical with Euclidean zoning, where you get a CCS, Community Commercial Services, it's not preferred to go through a development agreement. You have a list of vested rights and permitted uses, and the rules are more straightforward versus when you get to a mixed zone that you're allowed to entertain in some sort of development agreement with that. The CCM zone allows a potential for up to 50% multifamily outright. The applicant they know they have a commercial site plan approved. They're trying to tweak it a little bit and entertain some level of multifamily. So the draft development agreement that was based off some initial conversations with the applicant, the numbers that were generated was 28%. This is the area in red of the proposed CCM general area. So they initially were looking at the 28.5 and about 15.4 acres. As time's gone on, they've looked at different options, and it's been discussed. There's an option 1 where we can modify the development agreement to allow 30.5% or 16.5 acres. That would be at location 1. But ultimately, they would like to include both 1 and 2. Option 2, which would be about 36.1 or a total of 19.5 acres for the site. So when it comes to the development agreement, you as a commission, and then as it gets either how it gets recommended to city council could tweak the development agreement as you guys discuss and see fit. Another option is you could also do something less than what the applicant's asking. There's a range probably in there up to 50% that may be deemed appropriate as you as a commission.
John, am I to understand that as option 2 includes both areas 1 and 2 as shown on that map?
Yeah, option 2 would be the sum of 1 and 2.
Okay.
That's that second area. Option 1 is that. They also, in their most recent submittal, have a list of uses. I do have a question for you and for them when they get up. There's medical that was left out of 1 and 2. As a planner here, I kind of question whether or not why you wouldn't want to just go ahead and include medical, depending on how deals go. If they seem like appropriate areas. If you had a medical use on the south side of that road, if someone came in and wanted to do a medical building in the north, as a planner, it'd be one of those things that we'd explain, like, yeah, I know the guy south of you could, but because you're north, you can't. Seems like you would include that in that yellow area also, if that's how you guys wanted to go. So current land use, I have it stated as a underdeveloped commercial site. So you do have a couple sites that are developed, but you have a lot of land that's not been developed. There's no significant topology or vegetation matters that are affecting development of this. City of Post Falls would provide both sewer and water. Looking at the zone change criteria, most of the first 3 are embodied, looking at the future land use map, the goals and policies, street classifications, traffic patterns. I think in the staff report, you saw the analysis of the traffic patterns. You also saw some conditions that were imposed in the development agreement that may trigger further analysis and traffic analysis, depending on phasing and staging of that project with potential multifamily. I'm not going to go much details on the goals and policies because I know the applicant does intend to kind of go into showing you how they feel their project is consistent with those elements. Here's the existing zoning, as you see here, as being industrial. Switching to that proposed CCM. Would like to remind that this was approved for a commercial site for commercial development. Admittedly, industrial and commercial now kind of can make commercialism kind of awkward in the industrial zone. Future land use, knowing that it had already been approved in 2008 when we went through the future land use map, the business commercial future land use was deemed most applicable at our workshops. Here's what the business commercial, kind of the highlights of kind of looking at that. Promotes a mixture of moderate, high-density housing types within walking distance, within or near corridor commercial, which this site would be more or less a destination corridor commercial type site, as well as other amenities within Post Falls. So depending on how the site developed in proximity to some residence that's already there, it would be consistent with that. Looking at principal uses and characters element, you're looking at to improve pedestrian connections and promote compatibility between permitted uses. So as it develops, you'd be looking at that compatibility and connecting them. You can see here that the CCM is an implementing zoning district within that business commercial. Also, if you look here, the industrial is not one of the zoning districts. So the proposal would move it more in conformance with the existing comp plan. So I do want to highlight, so why, revisiting the comp plan and the adoption of the comp plan on this site a little bit. So why wasn't industrial included in the business commercial? Well, the second largest industrial park in the region is just across the street over at Riverbank Commerce Park. And knowing that it had a commercial site plan already approved to it, going business commercial and having those breaks and having more of a clear path for developers and development and the community deemed more appropriate through that workshop process. Looking at this, the font's pretty small, so to make it a little bit more legible, these are kind of the main tenets of that. You know, there's some buffering stuff for high and low intensity commercial development. A lot of that is not 100% applicable for this. There is one statement here that this area should continue to evolve, attract commercial businesses, high-tech companies, hotels, entertainment establishments, and potentially additional residential. So, and that's for you as a commission and for council to review per applicant's request. So all this, you know, once again, I'm not going to go into all the goals and policies. I'm going to let the applicant kind of go into that aspect of this project. I can leave them up here briefly. One here is goal 7, looking at plan for and establish types of quantities and land uses in Post Falls, supporting communities' needs and long-term sustainability. One here I would like to comment, maintain and enhance residential quality of life. Looking at this site, if you lived at Woodbridge currently and you were looking to go out, and I can't speak for those residents by any means, but if you lived in that site, I could see, you know, always having to come maybe down here to Spokane Street or over to Highway 41 for some of your commercial services. Right now you're limited to Panda Express at this time, and if you had some additional community need services established as commercial services that I would see as being a benefit to the quality of life of those residents nearby, as they may not have to travel as far for their daily services besides just relying on Panda and Walmart and or Cabela's. Some other items here, you're looking at revising zoning designations, considering the following there. And like I said, the infrastructure and service plans and existing future traffic patterns, there were some triggers in that where they would potentially have to do a traffic impact analysis stated in the staff report. As well as potentially sewer upgrades, so. This one here, you're looking at encouraging suitability with walking distance in residential areas, allowing a measure of independence for those who cannot or choose not to drive. So depending on how you went here, if for some reason there was some residences at 1 and 2, they would potentially have access to nearby commercial, as well as highlighted in green here, there is a park and ride out on Pleasant View. Commercial and high density is typically along higher classified road systems. Here's some excerpts from the staff report talking about access to I-90 and the proximity to Beck Road and the interchanges. You see here that the zoning is in general conformance to the anticipated land uses in the city's transportation master plan. Here's that traffic study comment you see here on the 3rd item. Next criteria deals with neighborhood commercial and low density being applied as you proceed farther away from your urban activity. It really wouldn't be applicable. They're not requesting it, and down the road this is probably going to have some pretty good commercial activity. Same with the industrial zoning. That's not applicable. Here's the agencies that were routed. Post Falls Police were neutral. CUNY County Fire said they'll hold comments at the time of review of permitting and development. DEQ just had construction-related comments. Anything from me on the staff report before we?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the, like the aerial view, and to the, well, I don't know exactly what direction this is, but along, so Integrity Way, that property kind of fronts, yeah. And so then what is to the left? Or I'm sorry, to the right?
To the right, like,
Yeah.
that there is Cisco.
What's the other big building?
That is Walmart.
Walmart.
Okay, so, and then what's on the other buildings that we see on the other side? What's over
So
there?
this is actually on Integrity. There's a pretty significant slope. It drops down, I don't know the measurement, but there's a pretty good topo change. And this is like a bluff that overlooks this industrial development.
Okay.
This is all kind of industrial trucking type businesses.
Okay,
And then here's that road system that they would be putting in with the subdivision that was approved. You see it coming back up to Pointe Parkway. Here's the planned commercial pads on Pointe Parkway. This, what you see in gray, that is that's the RV park that's being developed currently. It's been approved through that was approved outright because it was zoned industrial.
okay.
John, did you say there's an existing subdivision there that's been approved?
Yes, Point at Post Falls, 4th edition.
And so those lots right now are already subdivided as we see there?
They're not platted, they're approved, it's called a preliminary plat.
Okay.
So it's planned to be platted
I see.
and it's a 2-phase subdivision, so what you're gonna see first phase will be the extension of
What
Ballway and.
What uses are currently allowed with the zoning they have today?
A lot of your commercial stuff, but then also along with that, a lot of mixed industrial that aren't necessarily complementary to commercial. So what you end up getting is this situation where someone may want to pay for the price per square foot for commercial, but they don't want someone coming by next to them and doing more of a noxious industrial use that would be detrimental to their investment in commercial, especially when commercial is tricky today anyways. And so by zoning it and getting those vested rights protects a commercial investor that they're gonna get complementary commercial development next to them. So that's really the difference that's evolved versus 20 years ago, that risk wasn't there as much.
I understand.
Other questions for John?
And certainly in the zoning it's in right now, if it stayed industrial, they couldn't put any high-density multifamily.
Yeah, with industrial, that's not an option.
Okay. And you said there's a max amount that they can put, or overall land mass that they can use for high-density multifamily?
In the
if they
CCM, the
change?
most they can ask for
Okay,
is 50%.
the most that they can ask for.
It's
is
not an
50%.
outright permitted, you can do up to 50%. That's something,
But what they ask for, once it's approved in the development agreement, they can automatically do that.
yes. So whatever's embodied in the development agreement, they can do that. If they want changes that's above and beyond what's approved, that then will be another amendment to the development agreement to go to council for approval ultimately. And then we record that against the title of the land, so no matter who owns that, the regulation follows the land, not the ownership.
Okay. Other questions? Everyone's comfortable, looked at option 1, option 2 as an option?
And if you want, I can put this back up at the end when you guys
Yeah,
get
that might
to
be
the
helpful,
deliberation.
yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. If we're good with Mr. Manley, all right, we'll invite the applicant up. Thank you, sir.
Okay. My name's Joseph Powell, and I'm representing the owner. And first, just want to thank you guys for your time and for your service for the city. Our zoning change request is coming for our project here at the Pointe at Post Falls, and so give everyone a better view of where it's at in the city, close to the state line. And this is the preliminary plat that's been approved that John referenced. And outlined in red is the area that we are requesting be rezoned into the CCM zone. A little bit more, I guess, on the history and also the current status of this property. My company, Wadsworth Development Group, purchased this property in 2013 from the original developer. At that time, there was only Cabela's and Walmart located in the project. At the West Pointe Parkway was built. Part of Baugh Way was built, but that was about it. And it had kind of sit for a number of years. As John had referenced, the initial thought of the original developer was some large, big box commercial development for this region. Different downturns and real estate cycles have gone on. Looking at the market, that's probably not the best use of the land currently, and there's not as much of a demand for it, and that's kind of why it's sat vacant for so long. As I mentioned, the Wadsworth Development Group has constructed several public roads, upgraded the utilities in this area, tried to partner with developers. We've sold some pads and gotten some movement, but in sensing the needs of the market and also reaching out to some of our contacts, large national retail companies, the sense for them, or the hesitance of them to come to this park, has been mainly because there hasn't been enough residential houses in that area to support retail and commercial that's needed. And that's kind of another reason why we're bringing this request to you at this time. Again, as we've mentioned, our proposed change is to go to a commercial mixed use zone. This would help us to be able to bring some residential, but then also have a lot more flexibility to be able to get some retail, commercial, office uses in this area to really help thrive and really bring a lot of development at once, instead of how it is currently zoned industrial. The current zone has also been another reason why other people that we have talked to, other users or national retail brands have stayed away because of the industrial zone. We have looked at the city's goals and plans and their comprehensive plan, and have wanted to kind of go through those and how this request meets that need. So as we look at amending the zoning map, that it should be in accordance with the future land use map, similar to what John had shown. Currently, it's industrial, but outlined and hashed in black here. This business commercial zone is what the future use of this land is intended through the comprehensive plan. And we feel that the CCM zone request fits within that and helps. As John mentioned, this is a proposed use of the land here. One thing that we, I guess, in this request are looking for is just some flexibility to be able to work with partners and work with the city in order to actually get all these lots built out. And whether that's using the medical in all of this space, but also other commercial uses, possible assisted living, whatever's allowed within this zone, in order to find other developers or owners to come in and to help us develop this out. So that's a really vibrant community and neighborhood for the city. As we look at the comprehensive plan, the focus area, it talks about how this should evolve. This region should really evolve so that it can provide those different uses, whether it's, you know, a high-tech office space or some hospitality, some entertainment, additional residential. And we believe this zoning request fits in line with the comprehensive plan because we're asking to kind of help us evolve so that we can get some real traction and movement in this area to help the city out. Considering the traffic patterns, as we look at the road classification, I've outlined here approximately the requested area that would be in the zone. You can see clearly that Beck Road's here as a minor arterial. We also have, in looking at, you know, the initial plan, I guess from the very beginning, the West Pointe Parkway was intended to be a commercial road to be able to have that capacity to move people in and out of the area, and being in such close proximity to the highway, it's able to not affect other neighborhoods in their traffic patterns. And this is just an aerial of the West Pointe Parkway so that you can see, you know, we've really tried to beautify, have some nice vegetation, sidewalks. It's a large road that can handle a large capacity of traffic. Again, we do have, I have one of our partners who's under contract for multifamily in this region here, north of the West Pointe Parkway, who can speak to it later of his project. But looking at ways that we can be able to create, I guess, for commercial use, but also for the residents, be able to interact, not be stuck in a car, but be able to have options to actually walk to get groceries or walk to the dentist, or be able to go and have a nice, you know, dinner out and not have to drive. And that's kind of the intent of this request that we're trying to create and trying to help this area see. As we mentioned before, this is intended to be more of a high-intensity urban area, the focus area of Riverbend, and so this point and the next point don't really apply as much to this request. But in our viewpoint, goals reached by changing this zone, we're able to get with the master plan, I guess, and the comprehensive plan, and kind of meet in the middle to get more in line with what the intent was for this region. We would be able to create a mixed-use zone, which would be more sustainable in an economic downturn, and also create some walkable communities where there's really nice pathways, sidewalks, where people can use instead of having to just use cars for their transportation. And with being so close to the interstate, it's not going to affect a lot of other communities. It's going to keep traffic close to that interstate and be able to help people that choose to live there to really have a great experience there. It also, I mean, with all the walking around, it helps people to create a better bond with each other as they're passing each other on the sidewalk in the community. They'd be able to, you know, stop and say hi and actually interact. And that's kind of the feel that we're going for in this region. And now I'll just turn some time over to Ron to speak about the multifamily for you.
Perfect. And just so you know, he turned over, you have 5 minutes, so.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Joe. Good evening. I'm Ron Wu. I'm from Red Tail Multifamily Land Development. We're a developer out of Southern California, and we've partnered with Wadsworth for the 19 acres here north of Pointe Parkway. And kind of what we envision if this rezone is approved is a really pedestrian-friendly apartment complex that's set back behind 3 acres of commercial along Pointe Parkway to kind of keep the spirit and intent of the retail and a commercial corridor here. So we would be proposing 3 acres of commercial along Pointe Parkway, and set back behind that would be 270 apartment units. We would have 264 3-story apartment units, 1, 2, and 3 stories. We would also have 6 for-rent townhomes along a central promenade there that would really promote walkability to Walmart and the retailers and the future tenants along the commercial center. We think it would be a great opportunity to provide, walkability to a pharmacy, Walmart, eateries, your kind of day-to-day services, possibly medical services like a dentist or a optometrist. Just something to bring the rooftops into the center and really help Wadsworth kind of build out their vision and attract the retailers that they need to kind of build the center. And so one of the projects visually that we've toured and really liked the feel of is this deal in Boise. It's Kensington at North Point. As you can see here along the kind of main thoroughfare here of West State, they've got retail abutting the front and then the multifamily in the back. They've also got a Walmart here across the main thoroughfare. Just a really easy to walk to, your daily services. Residents really like that option of, hey, I don't need to get in the car to, grab a sandwich or grab some groceries. And I've included a few kind of visuals here from your Google Earth. So the first picture here is looking north from State Street, kind of coming up that commercial entrance through the commercial center. The second photo is a view that's northwest, kind of showing how the apartment in the commercial center lives. And then here's a few more pictures kind of the entrance and of the retail again. And then in kind of closing, we've done a number of projects along the West Coast. This is a project that we did in Boise that we finished in 2019. We're really focused on the 3-story garden style product, attractive architecture, and this is something that we would be proposing for this project as well. Thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions along with Joe.
Questions for either applicant?
Is West Point Parkway is going to be the only way in and out of this whole thing as this develops, right? There's no other, like North Cabela Way is not going to be extended. You're just going to have the one way to get in, right?
I believe so, right?
Yeah, currently that's the main thoroughfare. There's, of course, Beck Road where that would go north.
But what I'm saying is Beck and Baugh, you can get in there, but then West Point to come into the apartments, Cabela's, that's just the only way out. Like North Cabela Way doesn't go up north out to Celtice, and obviously to the south you got the interstate, so you're just looking at one way in. Well, I know that road is that wide. I'm sure it can handle it. I'm just long term.
Yeah, I think the intent is for that to that road to go through, but of course there's other property owners to the north of that. But they do have along West Point Parkway, if they do want to go north, they could take Baugh Way, or if they continue on, they could go north on Beck as well. And the new road that we're proposing to go through the new subdivision would be another alternative if they're going to just, one of those destinations that's in the new lots.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for Mr. Powell. Are you okay with medical in the area that you had in green?
Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah,
Okay, as an option.
We just want it to be open and definitely okay with medical being in that as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, our intent is to be able to provide as many options as we can in order to get the services that's needed there in the commercial and office and whatever uses that's really needed for the community to thrive.
Okay. And then I think you mentioned a little bit about national retailers wanting rooftops. Can you speak to that maybe a little bit more and explain that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a few national retailers that we've done projects with in other states who have looked at this site in the past, but one of their criteria is to have more rooftops closer by to utilize their service, or that they could justify that would utilize it more on a regular basis instead of having residents, I guess, further away. You know, they want a higher density that's close by, and so that was one of the reasons why they had chose not to pursue this site. The other reason was that it was, of course, zoned industrial.
Okay. So does the inclusion of multifamily get it above those thresholds, or is it still kind of below?
It definitely gets it to those thresholds, and it helps them to see that there's movement in the area. There's enough residents that are going to be there to, you know, either be employees or to use the services themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
No.
Anything else? No?
Can I make one clarification?
Please do.
To clarify the staff report that was delivered on the fire comment, they did make a comment about if at any point there was more than 200 units, that they would have to have a secondary egress. I showed Gerald Archer the proposed plan of the second phase of that subdivision to the south, and so there is a modified development agreement currently that takes into fire's concern, that gives a trigger that at such time that there's more than 200, that they would have to either provide that or the subdivision to the south would have to be completed. Just wanted to let you know that there was more to be added than in the initial staff report.
Okay.
Is that a building permit issue mostly? Not
He would review it as part of either a site plan review or a building permit, and he just wouldn't approve it. So
Okay.
if he has fire access issues, he just doesn't approve it.
Okay. So not necessarily a zoning thing, but more of
Yeah,
a
and
building
that's-
permit thing.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Anything else? All right, applicants, thank you very much. Open up for comment. Those in favor, neutral, and against. If you just want to bring them all, or
Yeah, we have one.
That's why I did it that way. I just forgot because I hadn't touched it in 3 weeks. Because we got to get down to things.
all right. Not wishing to speak in favor, Chad Bird. I support the application to rezone to CCM. Okay, noted. Any neutral? Any against?
Nope.
Okay. Then I don't believe that we need to bring applicants back up for any kind of rebuttal. Do we need them for any other questions, concerns, or thoughts? Clarification?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. What about continued questions with staff? Anything there? We're there? Okay. So we'll go ahead and close the hearing out, and we will move to the trivia portion this evening.
Did you want this up? I know it was mentioned during deliberation. If you wanted to chat.
Yeah, that would be.
Do you guys
great.
want to leave that
Yeah.
up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Please.
Please, yeah, thank you.
So you may have to go back and forth between the criteria and then.
I've got it.
Oh.
I can just read it. Is that
Okay.
Okay. So we can leave that up if we need to discuss it. Okay, zone change and initial zoning review criteria for the Pointe zone change. Number one, consistent with the future land use map.
I think that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
CCM's an implementing
Yeah.
zone. In that, I believe it's business commercial. And even more so, the what's it called? The local small area. What's that?
Focus area.
Focus area, thank you. The focus area talks about it very specifically. And this would meet that.
Okay? Everyone on the same page?
Yeah.
No? Yes? No? Okay. Number two, consistent with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan.
This is the one that I don't really agree with. Goal 1, grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls. I think we've got limited industrial and commercial space for folks to work, and to be balanced, we need a balance between rooftops, but also places for these people to work and to shop and to dine, and all aspects of a balanced life. And we've got limited, this is a really specific area that was intended to be large commercial locations. And I personally don't buy that we need to have multifamily in this area for more retailers to come in. I don't think if you add 200 apartment units there, it's gonna make another large store and a large retailer come in. It's already broken up, or preliminary platted for smaller commercial parcels, and those are in demand. And I think if those are available, they'll be sold.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Where's everybody else at?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of the comprehensive plan. I mean, I really respect where Ross is coming from. A lot of the comprehensive plan talks about how we want walkability, and it kind of folds into, you know, we have a dire need for housing. We've got commercial services right here that exist. So to plop, let's just say we plop the 280 whatever apartments in there. That's 280 apartment units. It's not somewhere else. That's 280 apartment units. That's walking distance right next door to Walmart. It's walking distance to hopefully future commercial businesses. So what does that mean? That means there's less traffic. So let's just say that there's an apartment somewhere across town that goes to this Walmart, or there's a new apartment that's right here that walks to Walmart. There's less traffic because of that, because it's situated in that location. And I think that, you know, the writing's been on the wall for this property for a long time. I mean, Wadsworth owned it for since 2013, so what, 9 years? And there's been very little movement out there. The box store stuff that, you know, the mall type thing is gone, right? I mean, Silver Lake Mall, Valley Mall, they're all dying. Silver Lake Mall's dead. So I really think that when you integrate the residential component into this, I think it drives both. So it solves residential problem. It gives the ability for someone a national retailer who says, or any sort of business that says, well, hey, I want to relocate to Post Falls, but there's no place for my workers to live. Well, now they can live right across the street, at least temporarily until they find maybe single-family housing or something like that. So I see that as a benefit. I see that as part of the goals. You know, that's all kind of dovetailed into the goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. And I think it's an important component because of that.
Other thoughts?
I was just gonna say, I can see both sides. You know, I'm not a retail person, so I don't know if really more houses, more rooftops are gonna bring those bigger businesses in there. But what I do see around this area and, you know, in Liberty Lake and Coeur d'Alene, there's a lot of this mixed use going in. I have friends in there, and they can, you know, you can walk to various businesses and do your business like that. So I think that's where the trend is going with development. You know, like this land has been vacant for a while, and for me, anything we can do to get businesses into the city so that people could live and work in Post Falls, I think is good. You know, I don't know if the apartments will help that or not, but yeah, I can see both sides right now.
I think one thing, to dovetail onto that, you know, locally, I think the first real true mixed-use commercial residential development was Riverstone and Coeur d'Alene. And it's important to remember that none of those commercial businesses really took off until the apartments really started picking up around there. There was just not enough retail or people there to push the retail and the restaurants, and now it's a lot more vibrant than it was 10 years ago because of the apartments and the residential component that's surrounding it in walking distance. And I think that's what they're shooting for here.
Yeah, I think to Ross and James, to the point, you know, does the multifamily having more rooftops, does it bring in the bigger business? No, I agree with you guys, it does not. But will it bring in the smaller businesses? Will it bring in some of the smaller restaurants, mid-sized stuff? I think 100%. And to your point with Riverstone, I can think of Boise and other areas where, you know, we've seen that. And I mean, you look at right now, you go out there, and what's the only thing that's out there? What's the Panda Express? I mean, there's a huge long line, so there are individuals out there that won't necessarily take part in these apartments, that are living in homes and that work out there that could definitely benefit from that. So to me, I agree. We're not going to bring bigger businesses, but there's going to be mid and small size that are going to be completely driven by those rooftops. So that's my thought. Anything more on the comprehensive plan?
Well, I think comparing it to Riverstone is a real stretch, because I don't think that's ever going to be a Riverstone right there. They're just two completely different. It's apples and oranges. And I wouldn't be completely opposed to some, to maybe some apartments or high-density multifamily, but I think those are pretty large complexes. And I think to the point that we keep taking all the industrial and commercial property and building high-density multifamily. So we've ran into problems out in this kind of area before, where residential is the zone, we approve a zone change or a subdivision, and residential comes in and it's industrial or commercial across the street. And so when the industrial or commercial tries to come in, they're getting a lot of naysayers from the residential, and they're in the appropriate zone. They don't work well together. I don't think, especially when you come to industrial and some I guess more industrial uses. But it seems like we're just taking everything and putting high density multifamily in it, and I don't like to see that. I mean, I still go shopping.
Right.
It just seems like too much for this spot when we have such a finite quantity of this type of commercial, industrial, large parcels. It just seems like too much. I'd much rather see it go in as CCS with a special use permit for a finite amount rather than a large pre-approved blocks for high-density multifamily.
Additional thoughts?
Well, I just have to wonder, I don't think that you'd get another big box of anything come in next to Walmart. So you might get something small to come in there, but you're not going to get another big box store or anything like that to come in, I don't think, next to a Walmart. I mean, I'm one too that I'm just hating to see these huge giant apartment complexes come in everywhere, but they seem to be the only answer in these kind of areas where you're trying to get some kind of businesses to come in. And I agree that you got to have the rooftops for businesses to it's got to pencil out for them to come into an area.
Yeah, I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but I would say when you start to look at that large-scale multifamily development compared to a mismatched, maybe misplaced infill little apartment, I would rather have the larger, the walkability, the parks, those kind of pieces. So I have a tendency to kind of look at that and say, okay, I think there is good opportunity there. And if there's gonna be anywhere where you have a park and ride, you have bus access, you have restaurant eventually, and food, grocery access, I mean, where are you gonna put multifamily? Not that I'm a massive fan of it, but if you're gonna put it somewhere, it makes sense to put it there. So,
While we're on multifamily, let me ask a question here. So we got we got option 1 and 2, but in the draft development agreement, it says 15.4 acres.
So the top-
Which would be up in 1, but option 1 says 16.5. So it wouldn't, the R3 wouldn't take up that whole option 1. Is that what I'm thinking? Or if we said option 1 and option 2 together, it would.
It's the
it
whole,
would-
it's that whole red dashed area, so they're showing 30% of the entire red dashed area in the development agreement is multifamily immediately. And then maybe some businesses might wanna come if there is more multifamily, is the.
Well,
is
the
the
agreement says 28.5%, which is 15.4 acres, and what I'm just trying to understand is, if you take both of those, that's 19 acres, so that's more than 15, and if you just take option 1, it's still more than 15.
so I think what you have is you have the draft, development agreement, which we've looked at, and it also talks about development may not exceed 380 feet of frontage on the, on that street.
I see
And-
that.
And so then, if you add option 1, you're taking it from 28.5 to 30.5. Then option 2 is basically 1 and 2 combined, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah,
Because they can go up to 50.
right.
Or we can go with option 3, which would, what the draft
Be
says.
something less.
Or be something less. So in essence,
Less.
I
Gotcha,
believe
okay.
we can go.
How
ahead.
much multifamily have we already approved just immediately east of this? There's a lot. So there's already a lot of rooftops that are coming. Just to the east of the street, we can see on the edge of the map there. And, all around there, we've approved multifamily. I just think, well, we can make it all multifamily and have nothing left very easily. And that's what's gonna sell immediately. It's gonna go fast and it's gonna be, I mean, that's what is gonna happen. And so I just believe it's just too much.
So you're not necessarily opposed to multifamily in some capacity, just a
And
smaller.
I believe we
restricted
have to
area.
have multifamily.
Right.
I'm just saying that, and we have it going everywhere, right? Spread out all over the place. We've got a lot of it. And so then, once this is all built out, what are we gonna have left for commercial and industrial and to employ these people and provide services? You know, we gotta preserve some space. And the intention of this was just that. That's why, that was the original development, the original zoning. And so to change it now to have more, that's a lot.
Well,
Anyway,
I think this is all great conversation. If I'm not mistaken, this is exactly why we do this. So, anything else to add with number 2 as far as goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan? Let's move on to number 3. Zoning is assigned following consideration for such items: street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features.
I think the staff report goes into it well, you know, with the size of West Point Parkway, and to be able to get in and out of there, that's the only entrance as of right now. There's already some commercial development out there, so I think it fits in with that area.
Yeah, from a traffic standpoint and street size and whatnot, I think everything out there is either collector standard or bigger. I don't think there's anything local, any local streets out there. So, you know, from that standpoint, I think it's all met with regards to street size and land use and whatnot.
Anything else? Which takes us right into number 4. Commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classification. Ray, I believe you just covered that. Anything else to add? Okay. Number 5, limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zonings are typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from higher density and urban activity.
I think that's not applicable, right?
Yeah, I don't think.
Because they're
Yeah.
not looking for either of those necessarily.
And lastly, industrial zoning is typically assigned for properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes and may be situated away from residential zoning.
So the vast majority of this is industrial zoning, and so, which, but the uses, with the exception of Cisco, are not necessarily industrial, they're more commercial in nature. So, with the zone change, the zone change is really not applicable to this,
No.
but, so,
Current use versus.
current use
Yeah.
versus future.
Okay. Let's continue,
Well, here, I have one more
continue
question.
discussing. Yes, please.
This is for John. How much, we see a lot of commercial, we see a lot of residential. How much industrial do we have out there that's available that could be, and what are you seeing from a planning perspective as far as trends in industrial? Are people saying, yeah, I need industrial, or is it more say like, well, no, industrial really doesn't fit, but I'm still a commercial business, or?
We get a lot of demand for researching the availability of service-ready, industrial, already sewer, water, so they can move in. But the difference is different square footage, whether it's a 50,000 square foot, 20,000, 100,000 square foot. A lot of times they need to have a short move-in, window. They're looking for some quick lease. As far as this, I could just say it's been industrial. The history of this since the conception of it, it's sat vacant. You've had other stuff like Riverbank Commerce Park. We've gotten some gained interest. It's starting to absorb fairly quickly. I can state that we have the technology mixed park that we recently annexed north of Highway 41 Prairie. We also have a large area out in West Post Falls that's designated industrial outside of our city limits for future industrial for the city of Post Falls. I don't have those amount of acreage quantified, but historically the absorption rate of industrial is fairly slow.
When you say it's sat vacant though as an industrial lot, you mean it's sat vacant as a 54-acre industrial lot, right?
There's I could go.
How many parcels is it currently?
Okay, let's see the best image to go into this. So, if I knew this question was coming, I would have specifically made a slide for it. You can kind of see there's been a pre-existing plat done. These lines were platted lots that were sitting in an industrial zone. At any point in time, the landowner, more than likely, could have done a boundary line adjustment and sold a lot to an industrial user.
If they would have done a boundary line, so it wasn't ready to go.
No, it was ready. They could have just connected sewer and water. They could have sold it. It could have been a land transaction and developed.
I think that
was
the
platted.
point, I think the point that we're making is that if that was 30 industrial lots, the likelihood of sale would be much different than if it's one 54-acre lot.
I would say there's probably, I don't know the number, there's probably anywhere from 10 to 20 currently platted lots on that.
Oh, without-
Currently platted or
Yes. There was
Is that this one?
I'll see if I can pull up the aerial, see if it'll let me.
Field with some of the conversation that we're going into after closing the hearing. Obviously, there's some new findings that we're going to be looking at. Should or could we reopen the hearing to give opportunity for continued conversation with not only staff but applicant?
Yes, you could reopen the public hearing
for new information, but then you'd have to give the same opportunity for rebuttal.
Right, which, yeah.
But do we need to reopen it to ask staff for clarification?
As long as it's not new information, and again, I think this is a clarifying, the maps are in the.
I'm seeing a lot of conversation that seems that they're, with the applicant. In order to be fair, the applicant seems to have some additional information that they want to cover. I don't know if that's the case.
So this is the current plat in the industrial.
Hold on. Okay, so, yeah, hold on just a second. Go through your part.
So this right here is the existing plat of lots that are out there currently, of which easily could have been sold. They would have submitted a site plan to the city of Post Falls. We would have looked at the sewer and water availability. Anything that didn't meet the needs, we would have conditioned accordingly for site plan approval. They could have reconfigured any of these lots in any configuration through a BLA. It's a little more difficult now because we have a BLA process recently we've adopted, but you know, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lots there. You also on South of Pointe Parkway we got that establishment. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lots, 11 lots you had. And
Okay.
so you had about, like I said, about 15 lots. You could have moved things around a little bit for someone to buy and develop as industrial, and it's been that way. I don't know the date of the recordation of that plat, but it's been there since my time here.
Okay.
So how much of the surrounding
Yeah.
property?
So let's just do this real quick, just because I think it would be fair as long as everybody's fair with it. There's some additional things and some new stuff that we're discovering. Can I go ahead and reopen the hearing? Okay, so we'll go ahead and reopen it. Sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's all right. How much of the surrounding area, and has recently or been approved for high-density multifamily?
In this area, you can see the structures of,
Okay.
this here is Amelia Apartments. East of this line, Amelia Apartments is here and here. Those two lots are in altogether Amelia Apartments. And then this is what's called Apartment 26. So that is their site. I believe these two sites combined for currently about, counted today, the site plans, I believe there's about 475 units between those two projects.
That are completed or?
No, they're into construction.
Just
That's-
started.
That's what you see when you
Okay.
drive down, you see
So
the.
do you think, so we can assume that those are going to be some rooftops that could draw in potential commercial businesses, right?
And
I
then to
mean,
the north there, John, that's
Yes, yep, this is one that has been, I think it's the Remington Apartments that was recently, it's full.
And how many is that, do you?
I don't know that,
general?
I haven't looked, I just happen to know that because the gentleman came in
Okay.
today and I answered that question. And then you have Parkwood Properties that.
When you say it's full,
built out.
Built out?
Yeah, it's built out, it's occupied. More than likely right now.
fully occupied, it's
So
field.
it's 132 units.
132 units, that is completely full.
So 400 and something, and then 132, okay, so getting close to 500, huh?
John, while you have that up, will you zoom out and show us the extents of the industrial corridor on Pleasant View?
Yeah, no, this here is currently all the industrial land zoned in Post Falls. You also have the Pleasant View corridor that was recently annexed. We got industrial from there up to Prairie in Pleasant View. It does go into some mixed zones up here and it transitions to additional industrial at that location. It's been recently been added.
When do you think that stuff will come online and industrial businesses could move in there and have
I know
services
that
available?
this trucking facility is looking at trying to get applications and permitted sooner than later.
Wasn't there an issue with getting sewer up there?
I can't, maybe someone from engineering may want to speak to the endeavors of getting sewer, or if, I haven't been in any of the meetings on coordinating sewer at Pleasant View.
Okay, I
so-
just remember when we brought that on that there was some issues.
I believe
with-
Mr. Steele must have something to say.
Oh.
I have a little bit in. No, I mean, it's in the process, it's being worked through. There is a plan that is being created to get the sewer line up there. I believe that they intend to start construction on that next year. And I think it's about 2 years out. I think that the trucking company that's intending to go up there wants to be open before the end of '24. I believe is where they're at. They originally were aiming for the end of '22, then they pushed it to '23. Like now they've realistically been able to push it to '24. But that opens up that corridor for a lot of it, at which point the city is also will be doing construction on the north side for a lift station and additional water.
So 2 or 3 years, there might be some parcels available there.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there is a lot of industrial land that's basically ready to roll, and I know that, you know, with this site, Walmart, Cabela, they don't want industrial nearby, but that's just what we hear, so.
Okay.
Well, could we just review again quickly, what's allowed in industrial? What's outright allowed?
Okay.
I think I have a thing on that, but I don't know.
Since we're
what it
here, I
is.
can pull up the land use
Okay,
table.
there we go.
If only there was a website that we could go to right now.
John, if you click the little caret on the last page, where it says city website.
Sorry, I'm
You do you.
I was here before those little quick links were there, so I got bad habits. So, we can go to, like you can see here with sales and service, there's some similarities between the CCM a little bit. You can kind of see some similar permitted uses for the commercial stuff.
So all of that is the Ps are permitted in industrial.
Yeah, one difference is you can't do a car lot or a used car dealership in industrial. I mean, in CCM, so you couldn't do a car lot out there, but you could in the industrial.
Okay.
Not that any of this makes much of a difference. Oh, here's one. You couldn't do a heavy equipment repair site up there in CCM, but you can in industrial. So you could get a heavy equipment repair center up there next to Cabela's, as it's currently zoned. You could, in the industrial, do a tractor, heavy equipment, trailer dealership, which you can't do in CCM.
You can do a lot in industrial, though.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done in industrial, and
but like what Mr. Seal commented on, if you're Walmart, you may not want a heavy equipment tractor dealership right next to you. If you go do a high-end commercial and then a tractor dealership goes by, that may not be deemed as a complementary type item, versus if your goal is to do storage units.
That's a valid point, but also, they might not have moved to the end of a residential cul-de-sac and built a Cabela's either.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as you see here, then you go to industrial section, you can see here in industrial, there's a lot of items that are permitted that in the CCM aren't. Asphalt plant, potentially through a special use permit. Manufacturing facilities you can do in industrial that aren't in CCM, because the goal of the two districts was community commercial mix. So the goal was to focus the commercial towards community-minded type commercial and not allow more of your nuisance-oriented industrial that would detract from the sense of community, which you would have your industrial zone that would then harbor a lot of these uses. Like wood products manufacturing is permitted outright, potentially in the CCM through a special use permit. So you'd be looking at a wood products manufacturing, maybe it's an artisan woodworking type deal that's, you know, community, and maybe that would be approved, but if it was a big wood mill production, you might deem like, we don't want that next to whatever residence or something's nearby.
Yeah, heavy industrial isn't a good fit there, but.
Well, that's not in the table. We just have an industrial.
Yeah.
CCS is more, I believe, the intention of that area and what it classically has been. And so we're really the two reasonable options, or CCS or CCM, whether you want it to be more commercial or more residential, I think, is the bottom line.
And in a little bit of history on that, they did request for a CCS, and that was, I believe, in 2017 or 18 range, and it got denied at council.
Yeah.
And so the initial attempt was for a CCS zone, once again, to get that in line with that commercial site plan to market those commercial paths.
Other questions for staff?
No.
I have a
No.
quick question for the applicant.
Okay.
I've seen here in the title report, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Are there CC&Rs that are restrictive with regards to industrial?
So we'll have you guys come up, just state your name again, and then go ahead.
Yeah, Joseph Powell, representing the owner. To clarify your question, are there CC&Rs that are restricted towards industrial uses? The CC&Rs that are in place are currently are there to maintain the common areas of the property, and so that's helpful to make it a beautiful place. The landscape is maintained, sidewalks are maintained, and those are the intent of the CC&Rs that are currently in place on the property.
Okay.
Jump in there?
Yeah, if you're with him,
Just to
yes.
add on to,
State your name and go ahead.
I'm Chad Bird with Kinley Haygood, and I've represented most of the land sales from that side of Cabela's to Expo. I represented Jim Watson on his Expo projects. I've done a good bit of industrial transactions down in Riverbend in the recent transactions that have taken place down there. And to address the industrial side of things, let's see. So the reason you can't get an industrial user in here is because Walmart and Cabela's have restricted, they have exclusions as to who they will allow as users within a certain radius of their facilities. So
Via what mechanism?
Yeah. How can they tell people what can go there? I mean, they're not a,
when they,
Well,
it's in the deeds.
They
and
have
it-
exclusive rights.
So is
when
it's
the
their
was
property?
sold to them.
it's their
Then,
property.
No, it's a typical development exclusion. If Target were to go in there, they're not gonna let Walmart go in next door.
Because
So-
it's part of a development. It's
part of
actually
development
part of.
agreement.
They made an agreement with the developer when they purchased their property that the developer wouldn't
Right.
sell.
Staff,
in that
So
area.
I was gonna say,
Walmart's
do you
not-
guys-
Yeah, Cabela's isn't gonna allow a North 40 or a Dick's to go in right down the street.
Okay.
So that's why you have developments, is so that these big developers can have their exclusions, so that you don't have Walmart, Target, and everybody else on top of each other. And within those exclusions, you've also got industrial exclusions. So does Walmart want an Amazon facility going, say, down this area right here? They're gonna exclude that all day long. If it's a manufacturer, same thing. They want rooftops, they don't want a warehouse with 5 employees and
So
trucks
they
coming
get to
in.
choose when it comes up. Like it's presented to them, well, XYZ wants to move in, buy this parcel and build
Does-
here. Do you approve it? Is that how that works?
Hey, Nancy, let's let, does staff want to jump
that-
in real quick?
I got one more question
Oh.
before we go to staff.
Sure.
If
Okay,
you
no,
don't mind.
no, you
Then
go
we'll-
for it.
then we'll ask John.
Yeah.
Of those 20 or so parcels that are there, what's your listing history in trying to sell those lots to commercial users?
Those lots have been on the market for
As
7-8 years.
all of them or individual
All of them.
parcels? Like as one sale
No.
or individual sales?
So up until 2 years ago, I think it was, the listing team had whatever the current plat is. I think there were 5, 6 parcels maybe.
On the north side of Point Parkway, there was more on
Yeah,
the south side.
On the north side, and on the south side is
It looked like
3
another
or
6
4.
or 8,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range.
It was just kind of a hodgepodge of different plats. And I represented Amazon on a few deals over in Spokane, and we did take a look at that, but, you know, we knew it would be excluded immediately. And so you can market it a number of different ways, depending on how the parcels lay out. It just depends on what the user is looking for. So if you had a big user like a Walmart come in, you could take the whole thing on the south side of Point Parkway, or you could take parts of it. It's just kind of, the plat lines don't really matter if it's the same owner, because it's basically just a lot line adjustment. If you have one user that wants to come in and take down a certain portion of 15 of the 20 acres or 20 of the 50 acres or whatever. Is that?
I think
Did that
it's
answer your
important to
question?
know as well, when Wadsworth Development Group came on, those agreements were already in place. We've been, the property has been zoned industrial at least since 2006, and those parcels have been available to be sold. When we took on the project in 2013, ever since, they've been marketed, they've been ready to sell, they've been parcels that are able to sell and be developed right away. But because of some of these restrictions from Walmart, or because of other reasons, industrial hasn't happened since then. Basically, 2006 to now, it's something that's been tried. It's not going to happen though. And we feel like a move towards this request of the CCM allows us to be able to work and partner with the city council, the planning and zoning commission as well. I believe because of our request in 2017 for the CCS zone, that was denied basically because my understanding is that the city council didn't want individual property owners to come buy a parcel and then continue to come back to city council asking for special use permits, and then ending up with a lot more residential, over a 50% maximum. Whereas that's kind of the intent of us wanting to come in with a CCM zone, to be able to partner with you guys to reach a percentage that's palpable for you, as well as be able to find what works for this region. I know you mentioned that, you know, Cabela's probably doesn't want to be at the end of a residential zone, but they actually do want more residential there. And if you look at the other Walmart that's in town, there's a huge assisted living and apartments complex right next to it. And so it makes sense that retail actually wants mixed use and multifamily close by, because that gives them the daily customers versus someone who, or an apartment complex that's, you know, a 5-10 minute drive, where they have to, you know, actually plan maybe a weekly visit to the region. And so that's kind of the intent.
Okay.
That's kind of how we got to the highest and best use of that parcel. If it were closer to residential or something like that, it may not, you know, single family might not make as much sense. But it's not going to be industrial. It just never will be, as long as Walmart and Cabela's are there. So it just seems like a good spot for everything. It checks all the boxes: comp plan, traffic, sewer, water, fire, hopefully, and it just won't be residential. I'm an industrial guy. I wish we had way more industrial land here in Post Falls, but in this case, it just makes more sense to go with high density.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Oh,
I got one really quick question. I just want to clarify. So, just so I understand, there's if everything in there on that map in red, There's a deed restriction that essentially says that Walmart or Cabela's can veto any sort of use that comes in. Is that a fair way of saying it?
It's not blanket like that. There are some restrictions where, you know, they can restrict against similar products or similar businesses, like a Dick's Sporting Goods or something.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Any other questions for applicant? Because I think we want to cover this. Mr. Seal?
I just have one more.
One more addition. All right, gentlemen, thank you.
Just one more, like, big picture statement. When we were in the process, over a couple of years ago, when we were in the process of creating the CCM zone, the community commercial mixed zone, this was one of the areas of town that was specifically used in order to envision how that regulation and that zone was being created and compiled. And if you remember, even when we did the comp plan, that the map was adjusted during that process to allow for CCM in certain areas, and it also grabbed into this area for that business commercial mixed. We had gone over a lot of different iterations of that map, the future land use map, that ultimately changed the future land use map in this specific area because of the inclusion of the CCM and the anticipation that this area was moving away from that industrial type of use to more of the community commercial type of mix. Anyways, it was just, that was one of the things that came about during that process. So,
Okay.
just kind of note.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we want to get clarification or anything else with the?
No, I got mine.
You got yours?
I got mine answered, yeah, yeah.
I would just open it up for public comment before you close the public hearing, just to
Okay.
make sure if anybody has any.
Yep. Do we have anyone that has signed up in favor, neutral, or against? Okay. Okay. Do we need any other clarification?
No.
I'm assuming where we did, in my opinion, a thorough job going through 6 criteria that we do not.
And we have to do it again.
Oh.
So you can close the public hearing.
Okay.
Continue your deliberation.
So we will go ahead and close the public hearing. And since we've covered everything, I would open it up for comment. I think there was some, at least new angles on information that was presented. Thoughts?
I do think the owner or the applicant shed some light on why it hasn't developed, or at least as industrial, and it's because of the big box stores and their restrictions, which I think might make it difficult for it, if it stays industrial, to develop in the future. And I do think that there's a lot of industrial that has recently been annexed that could and should take the place of this. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I don't really buy that the developer tied their hands completely when they sold those 2 parcels, so there's nothing left that they can possibly do. I don't buy that.
Besides
But,
apartments?
But besides apartments, but I do like the mix. I do like the live, work. I think it's more intended for areas where we bring pockets of commercial into residential areas rather than bring residential into our industrial and commercial areas. But, I mean, I would, so we could put a restriction in our proposal for the amount of allowed residential then?
Yeah, if we went with option 3, something less than what has been proposed. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can put whatever you want in as a recommendation for inclusion in the development agreement.
What's your thoughts?
So how big is how big is parcel 1 then? Or what they're showing is 1 there.
You mean option 1?
Okay, so option 1 is actually just the 30.5.
Right, but
Okay.
yeah,
The yellow one, how
The
big is
development
that?
agreement
Is
initially calls for
28.5.
28.5.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay, so it calls for 28.5.
But then,
That's
yeah,
percent.
the other option would be the 30.5, and then the other option would be including option 2 as well to 36%. Or if we don't like that and we want to do something different,
Okay.
So just the yellow one is 28.5.
No, it's less than that, I think.
So to clarify, so we had a draft development agreement, and on initial discussions to get a draft development agreement before you, so you can kind of see what,
Yeah.
how the format
Yeah.
that would be.
so it's less than
That-
number
that-
1.
That was 28.5.
Is that depicted on your graphic?
So number 1 graphically depicted is either the draft DA or option 1. Because then afterwards, that same area discussed for the 28.5.
Yeah.
With the applicant said, we would prefer that going from 28.5 to 30.5 and increasing marginally from 15.4 to 16.5. So then me, because I knew that was asked by the applicant, threw that on here as option 1.
Okay.
I also knew the applicant desired to include the area, looked at option 2 for an additional acreage of about 3 acres, but then that increased to 30 to 36.1. It was my way of letting you know that there was different items being discussed, and for you, and to say that you have different options. Additionally, if you guys wanted something less, you guys have that right, because it's the
Right.
development agreement.
I think the sticking point, if I'm not mistaken, the sticking point was, is the yellow number 1 option 1, or is it the SR draft of the
Yeah.
development agreement? So I
Yeah.
think it's one and the same.
And
just a
also,
little
I
different.
think that where the number 2 is a lot less desirable for the area, for the property and the future commercial than 1. 1 is kind of off in the corner there. And so if it was, in the neighborhood of 25% in the location of number 1 there, I still don't think it's gonna bring more commercial into that area, but maybe
So,
it's-
so your recommendation would be if we went with an option 3 and basically put it at 25%?
in that area,
In
that area.
In area 1.
In area 1, yeah, okay.
Thoughts, counterpoint, anything?
I was either saying stay with the draft or go lower. I did math with 25% and 20%, but it's got to go north of West Point Parkway, like Ross said. I don't think option 2 is desirable so I'd have to stay north.
Okay. Other thoughts?
I'm all right. I mean, I think that the multifamily component is important. And while I gravitate towards a little bit more, I'm definitely okay with the whatever was in that draft development agreement.
The 28.5?
Yeah, I mean, I'd gravitate, in all honesty, towards probably 30.5, because, a 2% jump, but that's more of a council decision, I guess.
That's exactly right.
Good point.
So, if, I honestly think that, the point being is that I think it's just a really important component to it. If we're talking about having live, work, shop, kind of a type of a community, then this is where it's chicken and egg, right? Do you have the commercial first and then have the residential, or do you put the residential near the commercial or the struggling commercial? Or is it, which works best? I don't know.
Is there anything to prevent, so let's just say we did approve 25% up in that corner, is there anything to prevent them from requesting a rezone next week for the balance of it to something else?
But there'd be a major amendment to the development agreement, and knowing if for some reason it gets approved by city council ultimately, I believe that would be a long haul to ask for additional density to our current and potentially future, so.
I think that's the biggest piece with CCM with that development agreement, is once we have that in the development agreement, it's a very difficult process to change.
Yeah.
And that's that big difference between a CCS typically
And CCM.
and a CCM.
Right.
Right. And, that's, I guess that's exactly the whole this puts not only limitations, but it also says where you can put it. So they're not coming back going, let's throw some apartments in this spot right here, that
Yeah.
spot there.
We're still only at, yeah.
It says this is where we want it. We're gonna sandwich it right here. And I also think that that secondary area where south of Point Parkway is kind of awkward. Like, I would agree, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess for the multifamily component, I think everything else, including medical, would be appropriate.
And leaving the commercial lots with access to North Point Parkway there would be, preserve the opportunity to have commercial in that area.
Right.
So in the piece additionally, the owners agree that all multifamily development must be located north of West Point Parkway, and multifamily may not exceed 380 feet of frontage on the street. I think that last little sentence is the part that we want to make sure.
Right.
Okay, so it sounds like we're moving in a direction. I know it's been mentioned sticking with the draft at 28.5, and it was also at 25. I
Stick with
guess.
the draft. Make it easy.
Okay. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, well, what would be the 25%? What would that be acreage?
13.53.
13, okay.
Not that I did the math or anything.
Okay.
Nancy, anything else to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I would at this point entertain a motion from anyone up here.
Yeah, I'll go for it. Let's see here. Get the file number. I would move to recommend approval. Let's see here. I would move to recommend approval of, the name of the project is, thank you, the Pointe zone change, file number RZNE 0001-2022. Finding that the requested zoning meets the approval criteria in Post Falls Municipal Code 18.16.101, or 010, excuse me, and 18.20.100, as outlined in our deliberation, and direct staff to prepare a zoning recommend to be provided by staff, or to be provided to City Council, including a recommendation that includes the multifamily component to be at 28.5% and limited to the 380 feet on Point Parkway as described in the development agreement and the staff report, as well as allowing medical uses as in areas 1 and 2 as depicted in the map in the staff report.
And the CCM zoning.
Oh, and a CCM zoning. Thanks.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, call for a vote.
Stevenson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Schlauer,
Yes.
Hampi.
No.
Okay. So we are at almost, what are we, 7:25. We're going to go ahead and take a 3-minute. Is everybody okay with taking a quick break? We'll take a 3 to 4 minute and 24-second break.
think our next
this
special
one?
meeting.
Have everybody come in and take a seat. We will get things started with zone recommendation for Ashford Place annexation. Ethan, take it away.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ethan Porter, one of the planners here with the city, here to present the Ashford Place annexation and subdivision. So you'll be seeing two proposals tonight for zone request as well as a subdivision approval. The owner of this land is Coca Land LLC, and the applicant is Dobler Engineering, who's here tonight to represent the owner. They are requesting two separate motions or actions tonight, one of them regarding the annexation. So they're asking to provide a recommendation to City Council for the zoning designation of single-family residential R1 on approximately 12.26 acres. The next action or motion that you guys will have tonight is the subdivision approval. So they're requesting the approval and review of subdividing approximately 12.26 acres into 33 lots. And this is obviously contingent upon the planning and zoning recommendation of zoning designation and annexation approval from City Council. So here you can see the property hatched in red there. It's south of Grange Avenue, running east and west. And then it is west of McGuire Road, which runs north and south right there. So looking at the current land use, it's large lot residential within Kootenai County as it stands now. Physical characteristics as well as natural features, it is within the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer, as well as many trees also accumulated on site. So upon development, if that were the case, those trees may or may not be removed, but we have tree standards in place as well to replace those trees and have requirements from the urban forester for that. The water provider is East Green Acres Irrigation District, and the City of Post Falls would be the wastewater provider. Here we can see the zoning. To the east is R1S, which is your larger lot residential that you can see there in the light yellow. And then everything else to the northwest and south is all within Kootenai County. And so that congruentness within the city limits is on its eastern side of this proposal. Just south, you can see the darker yellow, which is R1 single family, as well as that commercial node, which is that red dashed line. Looking at the zone change review criteria for the annexation, we look at the future land use map and making sure that the proposal is in accordance with it. The future land use map does designate this site as transitional, and so the implementing zoning districts within transitional, within the comprehensive plan, kind of states that these assigned zones should be compatible with the adjacent zones and uses within the city, as well as consistent with the guiding principles of the focus area. So going a little more and expanding into that, you can see here the future land use designation. The blue is transitional, pink is business commercial, which you'll see to the west there, and then low density residential, which is to the east, that yellow color. So this does fall within the transitional zone, or the designation, excuse me. Looking at the focus area for the West Prairie would be one highlighted part on here. It kind of calls out between McGuire Road and Corbin Road, which this proposal does fall within. It does say mixed residential is envisioned between McGuire Road and Corbin Road with higher densities near commercial corridors and arterials. This area may benefit from a sub-area plan that examines lot and block development patterns to aid transitions of 5-acre lots. And then kind of looking at the next zone change review criteria, we look at the zoning map being in accordance with the goals and policies found with the comprehensive plan. I listed some out here. The staff report does go into more detail on those, but to highlight them, keeping Post Falls neighborhood safe, vital, and attractive, and then plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and city's long-term sustainability, maintain the city of Post Falls' long-term fiscal health as well for goal 12. Looking at some of the policies, which definitely are outlined more so, and I'll cover a few of them here, but the policy one does ask that support land use patterns that maintain or enhance community levels of service, foster long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance resident quality of life, promote the compatible, well-designed development, and then obviously implement the goals and policies with the comprehensive plan. So these can be seen through impact fees through the building permits as well as city standards and federal regulations for design and building code. Policy 2 talks about applying or revising the zoning designations with careful considerations of the listed factors there. We can see again goals and policies also labeled, but we look at traffic, service plans, infrastructure, and compatibility with surrounding land uses. And then future land use mapping, which was discussed previously. Policy 14 does discuss about the annexation procedures established by Idaho state statutes and applicable city ordinances. And then policy 15 is ensuring that adequate land is available for future housing needs. As it was mentioned later tonight, we do have, a housing shortage, and we do need to provide housing to those who need it as well. Looking at zone change review criteria C, we look at the considerations for the proposal, such items as street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land use, community plans, and geographic or natural features. So McGuire Road, which is adjacent to the east of this proposal, is a minor arterial roadway, and as you can see, it can accommodate 6,000 to 15,000 vehicles per day. So which projected volumes for the 2035, or projected volumes for 2035 along this roadway would accommodate per city master plans. Also, the protection of the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer, as I mentioned, as well as kind of some of those trees in this area and how that would be implemented in that development. The proposed zoning is compatible with land use anticipated within the city master plans also. Looking at the next zone change review criteria, we look at commercial and high-density residential, which this is not a request or application for, so this is not applicable at this time. And then we look at the next one for limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning, which is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from the higher intensity urban activity, which, as noted there, it's not near any. We primarily see these along Highway 41, Mullen Avenue, Celtice Way, and some sections along Spokane Street for your major commercial corridors within the city. Industrial zoning, which is not being applied for, so this zone change review criteria is not applicable at this time. And so that kind of wraps up that annexation part as far as the zone change, or the zoning request. And we'll move on to the subdivision aspect of this. And here on the screen, you can see that this is the layout proposed for the subdivision upon staff review, which is also mentioned in your staff report. It does meet the R1 single-family zoning standards and the official bulk and placement table. I've listed out there the average lot size being 10,880 square feet, the minimum lot size 10,000 square feet, which in single-family R1 is 6,500 square feet for a minimum, so it's well above that. Maximum lot size, which there isn't any for an R1 single-family residential zoning, but the maximum lot size proposed in this subdivision would be 19,954, just shy of 20,000. Yes. And so the first subdivision review criteria, we look at provisions for the water supply system. And so the water, as mentioned earlier, will be provided by East Green Acres Irrigation District. And so the next one would be provisions for the sewer. And so as mentioned, the city of Post Falls would be the sewer provider, and we do have adequate capacity to provide service to the subdivision as proposed. And then any existing homes within the subdivision, if remaining, will be required to connect to city sewer and pay appropriate fees with construction of the subdivision, and abandonment of any sewer systems as well through this process. The next subdivision review criteria we look at is the streets being consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. The subdivision, as reviewed by staff and commented in the staff report, will not have a negative impact, as we see, for the local transportation system. The direct access from residential lots onto McGuire Road will be prohibited per condition 8 of the staff report. The next subdivision review criteria we look at is making sure that the proposed subdivision, which may involve soil or topographical conditions presenting hazards, have been identified, and that our proposed uses of these areas are compatible with such conditions. So the site, again, it's over the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer. Connecting with sanitary sewer would protect that as well, routing it and not having it drain into the land. Also, there are no known soil or topographical conditions that we have seen or identified as presenting hazards. And then subdivision review criteria 5 looks at the subdivision being zoned for the proposed use and the uses conform to other requirements found in this code. As mentioned earlier, the official bulk and placement table as well as our zoning standards for R1 zoning is being met through their proposal that we reviewed, and so Title 18 and 17 are being met, as well as obviously the subdivision approval is contingent upon annexation approval from City Council. The last review criteria we look at is making sure that the community doesn't bear more than its fair share of cost to providing services. And so through impact fees and the building permits, these are offset through help mitigating off-site impacts to parks, public safety, streets, multimodal pathways, city water, and water reclamation facilities as well. So through this process, we notified these agencies listed there on the screen. And of these agencies, what we received back were from Kootenai County Fire and Rescue. They reserved comments for the permitting process, as well. Post Falls Police remained neutral, and then Department of Environmental Quality, they just had general comments pertaining to the time of construction. And so tonight, just to reiterate, you have 2 motions tonight for annexation and the subdivision. So subdivision, you can approve as presented, approve with conditions, or deny. And then your zoning recommendation motion to City Council would be to recommend approval or not of the requested zoning. So I will stand for any questions you have for staff at this time.
Questions for Ethan?
What's the lot size and density for R1S?
As for R1S?
That's next door, right? Across the
Correct,
street?
yes. To the east, it would be R1S. So they are 1 acre minimum lot area, and so their dwelling unit is 1 acre. And then their minimum lot width would be 135 feet, according to our official placement table.
What's
I'm not-
the-
Sorry.
Oh, you can go ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, aren't the properties to the east half-acre lots? That is the
Potentially, and I
PUD?
believe, is that a PUD,
They are.
John?
Yeah.
Those are half-acre PUD, okay.
Okay.
Field, this is just a comment, and maybe you can shed some light on this, but this kind of seems like a new format we're doing, where we're saying, if the city annexes it, we recommend this zoning. And if they accept that zoning, then we want to try this too with the subdivision. And it just seems like we're spending a lot of time kind of getting ahead of ourselves on this until we really know especially until we see what the city council is going to do with some of these in the future. So is there a reason that we are doing the what ifs?
Well, so the applicant's bringing forward the application. You can consider the subdivision based on the recommendation you make for the zoning.
Yeah, I get it.
And so
I get that we can do it this way. I'm just saying, is it prudent?
I think it allows a bit of, and it's up to the applicant whether or not
So it's
they
their
wanna-
decision.
Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I believe it's the applicant's decision whether or not to bring the.
Both forward at the same
both forward
time.
at the same time.
Yeah, what it does do is shed some light, even though it's not a guarantee. Obviously, with the R1, you approve the minimum lot size. But what it does do when you're considering the zoning part, you're also making a recommendation to subdivision, so you know what the lot sizes are. And if they were to change that, they would have to increase density. That would be a major amendment, and that would come back before you. So
I can appreciate that.
But I think the point is that it's not even in the city. So, we're sitting up here recommending zoning for parcels that aren't even in the city. So it is kind of putting the cart before the horse, because if it isn't annexed, we're saying, well, if this happens in 2 weeks, and then if that happens, then they can take our recommendation. And if they take our recommendation, then we're gonna say, yep, then that's good with the subdivision. But it is a lot of what ifs. I know we do it this way. I've had my comments about this
But not
before.
everybody does this. Some people do annex and just get their R1 zone. Oftentimes, they just market at that point. They get their zoning, they sell it to somebody else. You don't know what you're going to get. By having them combined, it does afford the opportunity for the residents to come down here fewer times. They can come down here, and so there is, but not saying there's how much value is on it. That is You know, there's
It
just
is a value.
Does that eliminate a potential additional hearing as well for us, though?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would,
They
Yeah.
have
So-
to come to us twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're gonna
But-
do
but
it both,
also-
we're doing both.
But it also creates a potential extra hearing.
Right,
Yes.
right, yeah.
And to go back to your comment, Nancy, the city council, when they determine whether or not to annex, they determine the zoning at the same time.
Yeah.
And they base that upon the recommendation from the planning and zoning commission.
Right, but what
So-
we're doing here tonight, or in this particular case, is absolutely moot unless the city council performs in a certain way.
Right, but city council wouldn't annex land without the zoning recommendation, so.
Right, and I think
We get the first one. It's
Yeah.
the second one that's a maybe.
it's the subdivision piece.
Gotcha.
I guess I just look at it in the sense of they're gonna have to bring it back to us if it does get approved, so
Yeah.
we
But
have.
if they start wanting to throw some variances in here also in case, then,
Then we have problems.
then we got problems.
Fair enough. Any other questions for Ethan?
Oh, back to you. No.
Yep.
No, I'm
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll invite the applicant up. I'm sorry, applicants.
Escape.
I don't know where we put it, right here.
Just give me a second, come on. And then, will this advance the slide? Oopsies. Hold on. What did I do, boss? Okay, here we go. But I'm ahead of myself. There we go. Okay, here we go. We know the place. We know the location. I want to dive right into that discussion you were having.
I hate
I'm
to have
sorry,
to-
Gordon Dobler, Dobler Engineering.
We know. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you, sir.
you, thank you. So we did come before you last year, and we requested an R1 zone without any subdivision. That went to the council, and they had major angst over that. And the reason is because an R1 zone can accommodate up to 6,500 square foot lots, which we never had intended. But we had really nothing to offer them to say, no, here's what we really want to do. And so they said, yeah, no, access denied. So you're right, it is a little bit of a, I don't even know if it's awkward. We've done this before with the owner too, who's here to answer any questions or add anything he can. On two subdivisions not too far from here. And what we ended up doing was putting a density cap in the annexation agreement that says, okay, we like this subdivision, we like the annexation, but we want to eliminate any possibility that you scrap this subdivision and come through with something denser in the R1 zone. So it's a big dilemma because the Post Falls doesn't have a medium zone with 10,000 or quarter acre lots. It's 6,500 or it's 1 acre, or you can do an R1 SPUD and get, you get smaller lots and you get higher density, but you dedicate 10% open space. So that's really why we're here with the subdivision. We would have loved to come forward with something less than less dense than an R1 zone, but didn't really have that option. So I get your angst, but that's why we're here, and we're trying to give the council something that they can look at and say, yes, this is what we want to do. Because, like I said, that discussion was, well, you could put 90 homes on here, and we're there saying, we don't want to do that, but you can't, so. Okay. Let's just go through this stuff. Future land use map, you've seen that, but I want to make a point here, and that is, in the future land use map, you've got this business commercial, which is on the other side of Corbin, and here's McGuire. We're in this transitional area that's between them. So if this really wants to be business commercial, and I wouldn't even call this, I mean, it's a low density, the lots we're proposing, but you have higher density, or I'm sorry, you have larger acreage lots on the other side of McGuire. So we believe that this density we're proposing provides a great transition between future business commercial and these larger lots in the Meadows and Prairie Meadows subdivisions. Current land use, yes, we're over here. This is the R1S that we've looked at, and these two are the R1s that I was speaking about earlier with the density caps. So I think one of the commissioners had pointed out that these lots, while it's zoned R1S, they are not 1 acre lots. I don't know of any 1 acre lot subdivisions that have been approved recently in the city. So in essence, you have half acre lots. It varies. You have larger lots in here, obviously, and you've got some smaller, but you know, an inspection of the maps that I did revealed that really the average lot size is about 4/10 to half of an acre. So when we say R1S, understand that the actual density is way less than an R1, or is higher than an R1 rather. So we just want to point that out to get the scope of land use and compatibility issues. This is the subdivision we're proposing. You've seen it. You've seen the 33. Our density per acre is 2.67, and honestly, we would anticipate in the annexation agreement a density cap to that, and we're fine with that because this is what we plan on building. Minimum lot sizes, maximum lot sizes. There is an existing residence up here in the corner of McGuire and Grange that we're going to keep, and that ends up being the larger lot. We also have a little dedicated open space tract down here by Hargrave that we're going to, we've already spoken to the city about this unused right-of-way that we would landscape that and fold it in until such time as Hargrave goes through, if it ever does. The tracks are abandoned and Hargrave goes through, but we would fold that in with this open space and make a bigger area for the residents. It would be maintained by the HOA, some place to run your dogs and hang out. Traffic, we've got 33 homes. Trip generation, 312. One in the peak hour, so you got 33 trips all told in the peak hour. Utilities, we've got utilities in McGuire. We already, we've got the will serves from East Green Acres. We've got the will serve from the city for water and sewer. They have plenty of capacity in all of them. So it's not, it's not going to be a burden, or it's not going to stretch their system. So let's talk a little bit about transportation, and I think we saw a note in the staff report that for now, this portion, the project we're doing now, which, let me back up a little bit, is smaller than the one we brought forward last time. The one we brought forward last time included an additional piece, and we've since just pared it down to this one. We think it's going to be, the market will absorb it, and we think it's a better project. So it feeds out onto McGuire, which has the capacity for the 33 trips in the peak hour. It can handle, I think this number was 15,000 cars a day, and we're putting 300 on it from this subdivision. And I'll show you a slide in a minute that shows future connections that would provide additional access. In fact, that's this slide right here. So this is where we would access for now. Ultimately, if this piece gets developed, or if this piece gets developed, we're providing street connections to here and street connections to there, as well as water and sewer connections also. In addition to the vehicle connectivity, I want to talk about pedestrian facilities and pedestrian connectivity, because I know you and the council are concerned about that. So part of the condition of the subdivision is to continue the multi-use path on McGuire, and we'll do that with the subdivision. Are happy to do it. In addition, Staff has requested ADA access across McGuire Grange. So we'll have pedestrian connectivity here and at Howe. So if I come back to this, you can see that we have a path that comes out of the subdivision and joins McGuire right here. And this is where we would provide additional pedestrian connectivity over to Howe at these 2 points. Schools, these are schools in the area. I just like to point out that single family typically generates, the Urban Land Institute has done studies, 0.6 children per resident. And that's generalized. It would be less if your market is retirees. It would be more if your market is all young families. So this is an average, but it gives you some idea of, the impacts to the schools. Parks, we have many parks in the area. There's 5 parks within the 3/4 mile radius. We also pay park impact fees that go to buy land for new parks with each building. So you've gone through and will go through the comp plan goals and policies. We've looked at the future land use. I'm not going to go through all these in detail, but we've identified them, and of course we think that it meets the goals and the policies of the comp plan. Additional housing, transportation, we have direct access to McGuire, utilities are there, public services, additional impact fees paid to provide those. Where we are providing a small open space area with the subdivision also. No, it's not affecting any natural resources, economic development, additional housing increases your tax base. We think that what we're proposing, and I'll show you some slides here in a bit, the housing development that we're proposing fits nicely with the community design and complements the character of the surrounding community. Subdivision evaluation, I'm just going to touch these real quickly. Provision's been made for water and sewer. We've shown that adequate provision for public sewage. Proposed streets are consistent. Yes, we are building standard city streets in our subdivision and connecting to McGuire. We will be widening that also on our side. And there's a condition in the conditions of approval stating that. It's zoned for the proposed use. Yes, we think R1 is with the lot sizes that we proposed and with the density cap meets that standard. And then, as always, the developer pays for all of the improvements, so there is no burden on the community. So after the last council meeting, the neighborhood, without seeing a subdivision plan, was rightfully concerned. So we had a neighborhood meeting in November, and I think there was, probably 15, maybe 20 people at the most that came. We noticed it. We actually used the same role that we give the city, and sent out notices and invited them to the Sawmill Grill, and it was in the evening. And so we had discussions there. We basically introduced the developers who they were and their business model, which is larger lots that you can build shops on. That's the market that they're addressing. We deal with 2 builders, Lawson, for the most part with Lawson and Anthem Homes. We told them that, talked about the kind of product we're putting out. Just general information. They were there to see, okay, what is it you're proposing? And there were a few that expressed some concerns too, but we showed them, these are real pictures from similar developments by the same builder and by the owner, so they could see, what we are going to do, the types of homes we're going to build there. And I'm showing you this tonight, not to persuade or bias, but just to share with you what we shared with them and kind of what their concerns are gonna be. Is, you know, what are you gonna put here? How many lots? What's it gonna look like? Is it gonna detract from not my neighborhood? So we showed them pictures and invited them to look at the other subdivisions and say, no, this is what we're building. So then let me just close by saying there were a few concerns. Most of them were just information gathering, but the one that I remember was, and they may be here tonight, I don't know. They were concerned about the view shed. Here, let me pull up a picture across McGuire. If two-story homes were built. Good God. So here you go. We've got these houses that back up to McGuire, and I believe they were over here on the east side of McGuire and shared that concern. And we talked with a little bit about them, but that's really the one that I remember. There might have been others. Hopefully they might be here tonight to share those. But it was a good meeting. Again, it was mostly just information gathering. So thus, in conclusion, we think that the annexation with this subdivision meets the comp plan, provides orderly expansion of the city.
Okay. Anything you want to add? You've got a minute and change if you want to come up. Just state your name and.
Ryan Stoker.
Okay.
The only other thing really to add is that, just so everybody knows too, our extension of this subdivision, besides the 1 6-acre parcel and the Adams parcel, the sewer runs out at that north end to where it hits Grange Road. It doesn't have the depth to sewer or anything else. They'll take major improvement to be able to, have any sewer in that general area. And you'd have to talk to Bill or Rob to find out if there's plans behind that. I'm not aware of any. So this isn't like a latchkey lead in to just marching across the prairie on that. This is where it'd stop until there's a major improvement of sewer coming in.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions for applicant? No? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Public comment in favor?
So I did want to
Oh, sorry.
address one
Please, yes.
comment that came in. So before this hearing, we received a comment that was untimely. Staff informed them that it was untimely, invited them to come and speak at the meeting. They decided, even though their comment was untimely, that they would email it directly to the commissioners. So you received that, which created an ex parte contact by emailing you directly. So I just wanted to kind of go through the reason we have that rule in place is so that we receive written testimony before the hearing, so that it can be included in the packet, because it relates to due process, and the applicant has to know what they're addressing and what they're testifying to, and so it has to be provided in advance so that everybody can review and possibly rebut that testimony that comes in. So that's why we have that rule, so that that ex parte contact violates that due process. So it is up to the commissioner to determine whether or not that testimony is admissible or not. We did provide a copy of that comment to the applicant so that they can speak to it. But
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
We have
Public comment?
some in all three. Do you just
Why
want
don't you
all
just
of
bring them all up and we'll go through them?
so I would have the chair make that decision of.
Yeah, I think that if the individual is, hopefully the individual is here to speak, but I would think that we have provided the information to the applicant, but in the same sense, I think rules still need to be followed, so I don't know that there would be a need to have it in there, so I don't see why we wouldn't strike it.
I agree.
Yeah, I think strike it.
Yeah?
And it's, and again, we're meeting to address the zoning classification if it's annexed. And I think that the arguments are most likely whether or not to annex it, and those are more appropriate for city council anyway. So
Everybody else comfortable with that?
It went to my
Yes.
junk mail, so.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't get the email, so.
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody did because I did, yeah. I think it went to junk or a wrong email. Okay, let's run through these. In favor, not wishing to speak, Jeremy Voller, so is in favor, duly noted. In favor, wishing to speak, Ryan Stoker, did I say that right? Okay. If you do want to speak, why don't you do not wish to speak? No. Okay, okay. Duly noted. I'm the developer owner of the parcels. You already shared, so perfect, thank you. We do have one wishing to speak that is neutral, and that is Angela Adams. And again, the process is when you come up front, just make sure and state your name and your address, and then you can watch the timer right up front. You will have 4 minutes.
My name is Angela Adams. I live at 2534 West Grange, and I am neutral, but I do feel R1S would be a better zoning. I think it would maintain the integrity and consistency of the area, and I think it would complement well with the Meadows and also the newest subdivision up north. I think it's Garnet Ranch or Garnet Estates, which is 5-acre tracts. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for, a little bit of elbow room. I would ask you as a board member or commissioner that if you do vote yes, that you actually have read the application and that you're 100% certain that it is for the subject property on McGuire and Grange. Like it was stated, they did have this passed last year. It was accepted. But when the Culca and Kelly annexation for these parcels was approved, there were several points of references on several pages that were nowhere near McGuire and Grange. I think it was clear to anyone that read the application that the property being referenced half the time was on Prairie Avenue. It was obvious that the engineering firm simply resubmitted the application for Culca Land Tranquil Meadows or Quiet Ridge subdivisions without changing the information. And he did reference the two closer ones. Two of the several mistakes I remember, one was the widening of Prairie. If you look at the project map, it's not on Prairie. Another reference was the traffic impact on Chase and Prairie. That's a mile or two away. So I just don't think it was right for that blatantly deceitful and inaccurate application to be approved by the city, passed on to you, and then approved again. It was also brought up about the neighborhood meeting. The neighborhood meeting was where they hosted drinks and appetizers in the Whiskey Lounge. And what I found interesting when this was referencing the local neighbors, there is a quote, there's a sentence in here that says, "We have been told by city staff that one of the reasons the project was denied was a general misunderstanding of the project." So that's referring to me as a local neighbor. That gives me the impression that the city staff they're referring to told Colca they could do everything, they did everything they could to push this through, but we neighbors are just too ignorant to understand this. I can tell you, I understand what this is. If you vote yes, I would again ask that you have read the application and it actually is for this property. The documents that are submitted to you, I think those are legal government documents. I believe they're done by a professional engineer. I think those should almost be flawless. There should not be that many mistakes in an application and have it approved. And I would just lastly like to say that I hope the approval of the last application with all of those mistakes, I hope that was an isolated incident and this isn't common practice for planning and zoning.
Thank you very much. Okay, in opposition, not wishing to speak, Sherry Bolander. I live in the corner of North Howell Road and McGuire Road in Prairie Meadows. Opposed so much. Traffic along McGuire is now with a lot of noise and pollution from the vehicles. Adding the subdivision will only add to the congestion and the traffic. In opposition, not wishing to speak, is Robert Lackey. In opposition, not wishing to speak, is Gail Randall. I've lived on 5 acres in the neighborhood surrounding the proposed subdivision located on Grange and McGuire for over 15 years and have watched all the changes and subdivisions being built nearby. I enjoyed watching the rabbits, the pheasants, quails, hawks, squirrel, and other wildlife in the fields and trees in the open spaces their home, making the open space their home. The current zoning of agriculture allows these animals and birds to live, reproduce, and survive on an existing 5-acre property. My husband and I raise quail and release them to live and thrive in the natural environment. I fear that this zoning change will allow more than one home per 5 acres will have a negative impact on these wonderful creatures. I know a lot of the existing wildlife has already been displaced from other housing developments in the area, and I ask that we do not disturb their habitat any further by allowing the housing development in our area. In opposition, not wishing to speak, is Tim Randall. The neighborhood and homes on acreage around the proposed subdivision located on Grange McGuire not only provide habitat for bunnies, quails, pheasants, hawk, and other wildlife, it provides home for small farm families. These farms produce hay, alfalfa, and produce on fresh farm chicken eggs that are sold at the local residents and local stores. Developers are willing to pay large sum for these 5-acre properties to put houses on, but I bet that their families would also like to purchase these properties too. But can't compete with the developers. By keeping agriculture zoning in place, it makes it possible for families to acquire farms, properties, and use them to give back and provide good to the surrounding communities. In opposition, not wishing to speak, Bernadine Ankley, I believe it should confine their building to only 1 or 2 homes per acre. In opposition, wishing to speak is Jeff Adams. So Jeff, if you'll come up, again, state your name and address. You can watch the clock. You have 4 minutes, sir.
I'm Jeff Adams. I live at 2534 West Grange Avenue. I oppose this annexation and development as R1. I think R1S would be a better fit for it. If you look at all the surrounding properties, you got big tracts of land on the north, south, and west, and you got R1S is how it's written in by your guys' own description to the west, or to the east. From my understanding, from what Dobler just said, these are gonna be shop lots. 10,000 acre lots is pretty tight to put a nice size house and a nice shop on without creating variances and everything else on everybody else's piece of property, even within the subdivision. So I think bigger lots would be a better option for this particular development. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, sir. In opposition, wishing to speak, Steve Clevenger.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Steve Clevenger. I live at 2357 West Grange, which is the northeast corner of McGuire and Grange. It's the old, the site of the old Grange, the Grange house there, if you know that area. Part of the appeal for my wife and I of that property is living on the border of the city and the county, and we appreciate all the benefits of the open space across the way. So I would urge you to not recommend annexation of that property. If you must annex it, I would strongly recommend that the zoning be R1S. My opinion is that it's much more compatible with the adjacent area. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. In opposition, wishing to speak, Jacqueline, is it Melendreyes? Was I close? I'm sorry if I butchered it. And then we'll just have you state your name and address, and then you have 4 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't need to
I'm
restart it.
Jacqueline Melendrez, and I live on Fisher Avenue. And last year I was here and I spoke about our apple orchard and our chicken house. But today I'm hearing many requests of revising and changing zones, zoning to high-density housing. So high-density housing could be accomplished. Many acres of large parcels are already being changed. So that's what I heard today. So I'm here to talk about the prevention of pheasant extinction. We were asked by the state to raise and release pheasants in our community. Since 2012, on and off, we've helped release hundreds of pheasants. Fenced subdivisions and asphalt is opposite to the natural habitat necessary to survive and thrive. Right now, the hens are sitting on eggs so the next generation can survive. The closest subdivision to me, at Chase and Fisher, is named Pheasant. The beauty the builder recognized is no longer welcoming, with tightly fenced backyards and concrete sidewalks and driveways. Our neighbor and us helped the state to prevent the extinction of the pheasant population. I'm here again asking for a tiny patch of the prairie, not to be taken away from the pheasant, the quail, the rabbit, and so on. This is their home. My land is their land. The beauty of preserving and being part of protecting our wildlife and watching God's creation in their natural setting has no equal. I am in opposition to changing our agricultural zoning and county way of life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Also in opposition, wishes to speak, Joe Melendres.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name's Joe Melendres. I live on Fisher Avenue. My concern here is, at what point are we going to have enough R1 housing to where it doesn't impose on the county? When I purchased my property, it was very clear that the dividing line was between, on McGuire, between the county and the city. Those lines were very clear at the time. My question now is, if we keep allowing this, at what point does it stop? At what point do us that choose to have a little chunk of land around us just get crowded out or taxed out? That's my concern for you folks, And I hope that when you guys decide on this, that you rule against it. And please preserve, the life that we have chosen to live. Obviously, life in North Idaho is changing drastically, very rapidly. And again, at what point do we say, hey, we got to slow down here and we got to just respect other people's? I understand their financial commitment, and they need to get a return on that, because anybody that's in business knows that. But is our livelihood less valuable than what they're proposing, is what I ask you to consider. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're
Appreciate that. Did we get them all? Amber, anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right. At this time, we'd invite the applicant back up. Mr. Dobler. Nope. Okay.
Yeah, could we pull up one of the PowerPoints before the layout of the lots?
I think Ethan could get you all squared up. I will have you step up to the mic just so that we can get you recorded. Thank you, sir.
Just the preliminary plat map. Perfect. Okay. What I was going to bring up, and it was talked about of making these like half acre or acre lots. The difficulty of that is in the engineering, and part of the right of way we've already had to give away on this 5 acre parcel through there, I can't see the, oh well. You would, to make these half acre lots, you'd combine 2 of the lots, because they're about 10,000 square feet. That gets you about 20,000 square feet. These lots currently right now are 97 feet wide by about 104 feet deep. Part of that problem is, out of a normal 5 acre parcel, it's about 330 feet wide by 660 feet deep. We've already taken out, or after we give the right of way for McGuire, we're down to 275 feet. So we have enough for a road and 2 side roads. So our options to make these 5 or half-acre parcels, it'd just be, just imagine erasing every other property line. Or we could bring the road in all the way over to the Adams property, take it down the south of the Adams property, and what you'd end up with is about a 100-foot wide lot that's about 210 feet deep. So you end up with a lot of really unused land. That's why we ended up with this subdivision. I'm not opposed to increasing the size of the lots. We work with the developers that we deal with to come up very specifically on what width works for them given those depths. Because normally you're dealing with about 125 to 130 foot deep lots on these. Because we had to give away so much right of way for McGuire, we're really kind of squeezed down there. And if it went to 1 acre lots, it's basically you take these and you combine 4 of them. And so if you ran this road down the middle of the parcels to make access really normal, you'd end up with 4 of them. So you'd be about 400 feet wide by 100 foot deep. That didn't make any sense. And if you took it all the way, the road in over to the Adams piece and come down, you'd end up with about 210 foot by 210 foot wide lots. So basically big squares. Again, not very good usable lots. We worked really hard to try to get the right widths to be able to put the shops on these. If you had any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions for applicant?
Do you intend on putting a fence around the perimeter at all?
I believe by requirement, we'd end up having to fence along McGuire, and I'm not sure about Grange.
Just
Bill,
McGuire,
Rob?
along McGuire.
Just along McGuire. We would likely have fences on the other projects we've done. We end up letting the builders build the fences out. We have fences on all the properties.
Okay.
But we don't build them. We leave it to the builder and the ultimate owner to build the fences for themselves.
Except for along McGuire.
Along McGuire,
With that
we'd be
exception.
required to put that in.
Okay.
The same way we did Prairie on both Quiet Ridge and Tranquil Meadows.
Okay.
Nancy, I think condition 12 has it on both McGuire as well as the railroad, along the railroad,
Yeah.
requirement
Okay.
for fencing.
Yeah, so, honestly, this is kind of way this site lays out. It's I'm an engineer also. This is the way the site lays out. We could tweak around and do something, make the lots a little bit wider. We could bring the road all the way in over to the Adams parcel and then cut it down. But it just didn't seem like the right thing to do. This was the best layout, and we've got a transition somewhere between McGuire is a great start, in my opinion, of a transition, because within, 2,640 feet, you're going to be over into that commercial business zoning. So you've got to go from where they're at now, and the lots directly adjacent to this parcel are all about half-acre lots. So we think we thought, design-wise, this was a good start at the transition. Okay?
Okay. Any additional questions for applicant? None? Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioners, any other detail or questions before we move into review? No? Okay, let's start with zone change. Is that what we're starting with?
Zone recommendation.
Yeah. All right, number 1, amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan, future land use map. Let's discuss it.
The future land use map shows this as transitional. R1 is implementing zone in that. So with regard to that, it is in accordance with the land use map.
In that, R1S wouldn't really be transitioning.
Correct.
Right.
R1S what?
Would not be transitioning to the commercial
Oh,
from
would
the
not
R1S
be
that's existing.
transitional.
Right.
Oh.
It's one of those weird things where When you look at it, we're not used to seeing that industrial corridor going up Pleasant View and being what that is, but it will, when it gets developed as industrial, that will end up being a transition.
Other thoughts? Okay, number 2. Amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and the policies found in the Post Falls Comprehensive Plan. Anyone?
The staff report covers it.
Yeah.
Pretty well. There's, and the applicant talks about it in their narrative. I think that covers a lot of it, but, with it being a residential zoning, whether R1 or R1S, if the residential component out there meets those goals, as defined in the comprehensive plan.
I think R1S would be more compatible, in my opinion, since everything across the street is.
Other thoughts?
Well, but for future land use designation, it wouldn't be compatible then as R1S because it wouldn't be transitional because that's what the property to the right is, right? R1S, acre.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Further discussion? No? Let's move on to number 3. Zoning assigned the following considerations such as such items as street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, geographic and natural features.
Like the staff report talked about, at least with the traffic patterns, so the Grange can handle this, and, as we're talking right now, it's in a transitional area, so is this the proper zone for the future land uses of this area? The aquifer is always something that's geographic in this area.
And also you've got the railroad tracks right there, which are, I think, are an excellent area to be transitioning and are going to make it less desirable for larger lots.
Mm.
So by transitioning, we're just completely looking at that as going from obviously yellow, low density, to pink, business commercial. So in our minds, everything on the west side of McGuire either has to start being R1 or multifamily, or, I mean, it as far as we're concerned up here, if it's transitioning, there's no other option, right? It's just got to keep getting higher density if it's going to go out and hit, if that's actually what transitional means. I mean, or does it mean it's in a space that's obviously not yet determined? It's in between. I don't know. I can't, I have a hard time believing that everything on the west side of McGuire now has to just become higher density so that it can butt up to business. That just doesn't, I'm having a hard time swallowing that. But that's just my opinion.
I think one of the parts about this transition that the applicant's making a pretty concerted effort to do is to make sure that it's not the minimum lot sizes, and there's no in between, right? So we got R1S, which is 1 acre lots, and then the PUD ordinance doesn't allow them to increase density anymore. It used to, but doesn't anymore. So that means 1 unit per acre in R1S, and so, I mean, one of the benefits of actually seeing the subdivision is that we get to see that they're shooting for the, 1.5 times the minimum lot size.
Agreed, and I'm not saying it's not, it's really not. I mean, they're not bad lot sizes. I'm just having a really hard time sitting up here and hearing that everybody thinks everything west of McGuire has to just get higher density until it meets Corbin. It doesn't really.
I don't think everybody thinks like that, though.
Well, so what does transitional mean then?
Well, the focus area in Appendix A in the comprehensive plan, the key purpose of that is to help provide additional guidance. And so that's where in the transitional you can look at that focus area and what does it say in there. And so that would help delineate land use applications, taking in consideration that you are having lower density on the east side of that road and you are having business, commercial, industrial type stuff to the west.
Okay.
So it may be worth revisiting those focus areas when you're reviewing these type of transitional applications.
Okay. Additional thoughts? Nope. Okay. Number 4, commercial and high-density residential typically assigned along streets, higher road classifications, not applicable.
Not applicable.
Limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned for properties as they proceed further away from the higher intensity urban activities.
That's, I think, fairly straightforward. It's all pretty much not high-intensity urban activity in that entire vicinity.
It's not neighborhood commercial, so I'd say NA.
And lastly, industrial zoning are typically assigned to properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes, may be situated away from residential zoning. That again,
Not
not applicable.
Except in that it's the reverse. We're trying to keep the large residential lots away from the parcels that we've
Identified.
annexed in as industrial.
Further thoughts? Anything else to add before we move into subdivision?
I'd actually have you vote on the
You want us to vote first? Okay.
request that guides the subdivision.
So in regards to zone change, initial zone review criteria, if there's nothing further to discuss.
Can we talk about the density cap?
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
That'd be more or less applied at the annexation element with the city council, I believe, unless.
Yeah, and it would, similar to the last one, you could put it forth as a recommendation for inclusion in the annexation agreement. Under that effect.
Are these two tied together, though? I mean, they're presented together, but are they tied? In other words, the details of the subdivision, are they tied to this annexation that we're now?
Yes.
Zoning we're recommending? So if they're tied, then we've.
So if we, I'm just throwing it, so say we adjust this density cap lower, their subdivision picture is obviously then going to change.
Right, they would have to
Mm-hmm.
resubmit the subdivision, right?
Right, so we could,
If they did a cap lower.
so if we wanted to hold their feet to the fire and make sure that they didn't do a bait and switch, which they didn't do in the last one.
No.
But that doesn't mean that they don't sell it to someone who would. We could do a density cap at they've got this at 2.67, so give them a tiny bit of wiggle room. We go 2.7 units per acre.
Units per acre.
Density cap on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessary or not based on the two being presented together, but.
Right, I think they'd go hand in hand, and it gives us the assurance, or at least city council and the community, the assurance that there is no bait and switch, and not gonna turn around and go 6,500 square foot lots with a future application.
Yeah, I think what they've presented is pretty responsible and tying what they've presented to the actual zoning recommendations. Fine.
I don't know, I kind of think the lots are a little small. I know how big my lot is, and I was looking at this map, and no way I'm getting a shop on my lot, so. And while some of these are bigger not all of them, so. And I just, knowing that across the street, even though it's technically R1S 1 acre, then there's the PUD, so they're all half acre. You're going from half acre down to quarter acre. I would like to honestly find something in between. What that math is, I don't know.
It's possible that we could save everybody a lot of time by making that recommendation a little bit larger, and it might improve their chances of getting it through council.
I would like to see
I'm
it a
not
little
really
bit
sure
larger.
that's our job.
I'm not against an R1. I'd like to see them a little bit larger, though.
What do you think, Ray?
I think that when I go from my house and I take a walk and I end up at the top of Chase Hill, and I look out over Montrose and the meadows, I see an ocean of rooftops. And I don't see a whole lot of difference from that perspective. The 10,000 square foot lots, or the half acre lots, or the 1 acre lots, or the 7,000 square foot lots in Montrose. It's an urban environment. And as a city, we're an urban environment, and we're growing. And a 10,000 square foot lot is, especially with the width that they are, most houses are in that 60-foot wide range, right in there, 65. So the 100-foot wide lot gives plenty of room to get around the back and kind of put a little shop kind of back off to the side, like some of the photos that they showed. Not a big shop. It's not going to be a 60 by 100. It's not going to be but it's the putter around shop, if you will. And I see this as, we don't have a zoning in between. I don't think it's necessarily our job to try to create one on the fly.
Yeah.
And I think they presented a subdivision that's bigger than most. They got bigger lots than most. It's gonna fill a need in our community. And even though we're just talking about the zoning right now, not the subdivision, I think that the zoning is appropriate for that. And I think the R1S zoning, because they can't change density and go anything. So I don't know how many acres this is. This is so 12.34. So it goes. We go R1S. That means it's 12 units, 12 houses. That's it. There's no opportunity for them to do a PUD to go to half acre lots. They can't and get 24. They can't do that. Our code has changed since Prairie Meadows was done, so they can't do that anymore. And the whole idea behind that was so the people didn't do a bait and switch where they went R1S and then came back in for a density change with a PUD. So, so what they've come forward with is an R1 subdivision and a request for R1 zoning, and they brought forth a subdivision with it to show us what we're going to get, and ultimately to show City Council what they plan on doing. So, if we're looking at zoning, I think the R1S zoning is not an efficient use of land. It's not. It was a really interesting idea when it happened in whenever it was 98 or 99, whenever it was, when the first phase of that went online. But those were 20 and 30 and 40 acre parcels where that started. That wasn't 5 acre chunks that people are trying to cobble together. So, R1S is, I think as it moves west, is probably inappropriate. And I think R1 is, and then I think it's just based on a development pattern that'll transition well over to Corbin.
Other thoughts? No. We opened our public hearing, so yeah, we've closed that. Thank you, though. Mr. Steffens?
I don't know, I'm not saying I'm against it, I just think it'd be better. I think these lots are a little too small, it'd be better transition. And I'm not saying we gotta go to R1S, but like a density cap of 2.3, 2.4, it's not much, but it's just gonna give that little extra. I mean, we got 33 lots, maybe it's down to 27, 28. That's where I'm coming from.
Other thoughts? Well, obviously, we need to make a motion to be able to move through this, so.
I think what they did is pretty responsible, and I don't want to err on the side of overreaching and trying to direct more than we should here. So I think that a motion to approve it as is the most appropriate. And so let's see if I can. I'd move to recommend approval of project. Is this right? Ashford Place Annexation and Subdivision.
Yeah,
File number ANNX-22-5, and I guess we'll leave the subdivision separately.
Correct.
Finding written that the requested zoning meets the approved criterion, City of Post Falls Municipal Code 18.16.010 and 1820.100 as outlined in our deliberations, and direct staff to prepare a zoned recommendation to be provided to City Council.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Hampi,
Yes.
Schlauhauer,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Stephenson.
No.
Okay, Ethan, let's move into subdivision review criteria. Item number 1. Definite provision has been made for water supply system that is adequate in terms of quality and quantity for the type of subdivision proposed.
I think the will-serve letter from East Green Acres covers that.
I believe it is adequate. Number 2, adequate provisions have been made for public sewer systems that existing multiple municipal systems can accommodate the proposed sewer flows.
Yeah, City of Post Falls sewer, and they said it has adequate capacity.
Okay?
I have some kind of deja vu on a project in this area where we had the pump capacity had to be increased recently. That's not just a yes or no. That's not applicable to this area. It's fine. Okay.
Not applicable.
Okay.
Not applicable. Number 3, proposed streets are consistent with transportation element of the comprehensive plan.
They're proposing to access all the residential lots off of local streets, and they're providing right-of-way and improvements on an arterial, which is McGuire. So that is consistent with the transportation element, and there's a restriction on access from McGuire, which also meets that transportation element, the comprehensive plan.
Okay? All areas of the proposed subdivision, which may involve soil or topographical conditions, presenting hazards have been identified, and the proposed uses of these areas are compatible with such conditions.
The staff said there was none known.
Right? Nothing was presented. Anything else? Okay, let's move on to number 5. The area proposed for subdivision is zoned for the proposed use, and the use conforms with the requirements found in this code.
Yes, it said that conformed to Title 17 and Title 18.
Right. As long as it's zoned.
Yeah, and this is, this is
assuming
where
it-
you're considering it
this
under
would
the
be-
R1
Under
zone.
the
So,
R1.
yeah, assuming it's zoned R1, it meets those requirements.
And number 6, the developer has made adequate plans to ensure that the community will bear no more than its fair share of the cost provided service by paying fees, furnishing land, and providing other mitigating measures for the offsite impact of streets, parks, and other public facilities within the community. It is the expectation that in most cases, offsite mitigation will be dealt with through the obligation to pay development impact fees.
So not only will impact fees be paid at building permit, but they're also widening McGuire. and
Yeah, that's
dedicating
no
right-of-way.
small favor that we're asking of the owner. It's a lot of land and a lot of expense, and it further, I believe, we're benefiting such a large stretch of McGuire there that it further justifies, lot sizes that are marketable.
So, unless there's no further discussion, I would look for a motion regarding subdivision review criteria. Anything else?
I just do this with a regular subdivision? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
all right. I move to approve Ashford Place subdivision, SUBD-22-7, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code 17.12.060 as outlined in our deliberation, subject to conditions 1 through 13, and adding the consideration items 1 through 3 in the annexation agreement. Would that be added here?
It would just be the subdivision.
Just the subdivision,
subdivision.
okay. Subject to conditions 1 through 13 in the staff report, and direct the staff to prepare a written reasoned decision, R1 zoning.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote.
Stephenson?
No.
Carey?
Yes.
Kimball?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Schlauer?
Yes.
Hampi?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to the final public hearing. Again, a zoning recommendation, as this will be the fourth recommendation that will be moved forward
Yeah.
to council.
So it's national.
So we'll go ahead and open that hearing.
As you saw me slowly get up, obviously I need to take recognition that it's National Senior Fitness Day and start taking the advice.
Stay fit, John, stay fit.
Okay, school district zone change.
Nobody cares.
So,
We
the applicant, planning department, it's the owner is the public school district. It's to rezone 3 school sites, as you see here. Little bit of commentary. So, one, why is staff presenting this? Well, I don't know, it may have been 10 years ago that we got rid of a public reserve zone because it was kind of mismatched. There were some private developments that were public reserve, and there was no consistency. So we got rid of the public reserve holistically with the idea that someday it would come back when it's applicable, when there's more thought to it. Well, that day is today with this. The other caveat on that is for the school sites with the current R1 zone that it was designated, that required them to, if they want to do any sort of addition or any sort of change, to request a special use permit when we already know what their use is, it's a school. And so, if they're trying to get contractors, get ready for a season, get ready for any sort of development, getting a zone that allows them to function as a school, the public reserve gives them that container and expedites any sort of future development on their sites. So we're back to the zone change criteria here. A lot of these really aren't too applicable, but we do got to see that if matches up with the future land use map. We still gotta look at the policies. You know, a lot of the traffic patterns, existing development, land uses, community plan, these are already developed sites. We're just more or less kind of like doing a cleanup. But looking at the future, here the zoning, you see here, that's that PRI, the yellow. Future land use, you see as that low-density residential, which would be consistent with an R1. But when you look at the public reserve zone, you see that it's consistent with all future land use designations within the comp plan. And the other one, they have to be at least 20 acres. And so these sites are all 20 acres. Staff is in discussion with the school to talk about the other smaller sites, how to deal with that, and what's the best course of action, and we're just dealing with these at this point in time. So there's 4 parcels, 3 sites. You can see here that in the low density, public facilities is highlighted as an option, which schools would be considered. The other ones really aren't applicable, the commercial and high density, looking at limited or neighborhood commercial, or the industrial. So the other 3 criteria really aren't applicable. So agencies are routed. Here's the comments that were received, kind of repetitive from the previous hearings. Kind of read them there. So, any questions for me?
Any questions for staff/applicant?
So the schools are there. They're existing.
Yeah, they're
They're all
existing.
there. We're just putting them into an appropriate zone instead of an R1.
Yeah, and they were notified.
Right,
So-
okay.
So they would have to get, what would they have to do with their special use permit if they wanted to put an addition on currently?
Currently, in addition, they would have to come in for a special use permit.
Okay, so that's kind of the big.
So it slows them all
right,
down. They're trying
okay.
to get a contractor lined up. They're trying to get their budgets, get their, you know, to meet their needs as a school.
Yeah.
And that 3 to 5 month lag could cost them, especially now with, you know, supply chain issues and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Could really negatively affect a school and their desires to meet the next school year's needs.
So would this be a recommendation as well?
Yeah, this is a
Okay.
recommendation.
So we're
Ultimately,
basically
it'll-
just saying we trust the schools to do the right thing and not have any input. Really?
John's hesitating.
Yeah, well, more or less, yeah.
Public reserve zone's pretty limiting.
Yeah.
They just get to do their stuff.
School stuff.
School stuff, or they could sell it to the city, and the city could do city stuff. But that's pretty much what's allowed.
Any questions?
There's the uses that are allowed in the.
Well, I'm on board. How about that?
No multifamily there.
Okay. No questions for staff applicant?
None.
Okay. I'm guessing there would only be staff comment at this point, but there is no additional comment. Okay. Any additional questions? Phil, would you like me to go through this in detail?
Yeah, just to stick with the
I knew that's what you were going to
process.
say. I just wanted to hear you say it.
But we should be able to get through it fairly quickly.
Well, yeah, I can't see this being drawn out too much. So let's begin. Number 1, consistent with the future land use map.
Totally is.
Yeah.
Okay? Number 2, consistent with the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Is it totally, though?
Well, it is, but I
Okay.
don't know totally.
Number 3, zoning is assigned to following considerations such as street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, geographic or natural features.
Yes, it meets
Yes.
those.
This is housekeeping, their existing
Yeah.
uses, it falls within that exact.
The schools are there, this is just housekeeping, really.
Number 4, commercial high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with high road classifications, NA.
Not applicable.
Number 5, limited and neighborhood commercial, lower density residential zoning is typically assigned to properties as they proceed further away from high-intensity urban activity.
Also not applicable.
Also, and lastly, another Industrial zoning is typically assigned to properties with sufficient access to major transportation routes, may be situated away from residential zonings. NA?
NA.
NA, okay. All right, it sounds like there is no further discussion that needs to take place in regards to this recommendation, so I would look for a motion on the school district zone change.
Okay, I'm gonna do it.
Do it.
I'm gonna do it. I move to recommend approval of school district zone change, file number ZC22-4, finding that the requested zoning meets the approved criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberations, and direct staff to prepare a zoning recommendation to be provided to City Council.
Of PR, Public Reserve.
Of public reserve?
Oh, public reserve, oh, yes, with the zoning designation,
Oh,
of public reserve.
public reserve.
I second.
Duly noted. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Let's vote.
Hampi,
Yes.
Schlauhauer,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Stephenson.
Yes.
Administrative staff reports.
None.
Commission comments. I would say this, what are we, 3.5 hours tonight? I appreciate the fact that we can all come together, that we don't always necessarily see eye to eye, but ultimately we're looking at what's best for the city as it continues to grow. We follow the rules. I think we work hard to read our packets. I would just hope that the time that we put in for this is recognized as we send that recommendation to the city. That would just be I'm not speaking for everyone, I'm just speaking
You
for
are.
myself.
You're speaking for
Oh,
everyone.
okay.
We'll find
Fantastic.
out. We'll find
All
out
right,
very
yes.
soon.
All right. Nothing else. I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Woo-hoo.